Good evening, everyone. It's October 11th at 6 p.m. and I'm going to call this meeting to order. And I see, does everyone have their face masks on? We are required to have face masks on. Does the lady in the back have her face mask on?
Heidi, do you want to give her one?
She does, okay. Okay, so let's have roll call, Janet, please.
Charles Black-Lance,
Here.
Kevin Boyles,
Here.
Tom Hageland,
Here.
Ruth Nelson, Jana Shogren,
Here.
all present.
I'm here twice. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, a couple of announcements before we get started. This meeting is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 13D.02. Meetings conducted by interactive TV. Persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location by watching on YouTube Live. This meeting is being recorded. Access will be made available on the school district's website as soon as reasonably possible. As you know, the maximum seating capacity for this room is calculated at 23, and Nystrom is available for extra seating. So next up, and of course, face coverings are required for all individuals in this room. Yeah, we'll have to fix that in future meetings. We have some amendments to the agenda. There's some changes in recognitions. There's no project oversight presentation tonight, and we added a closed session at the end of this meeting. And before we get into, well, the first recognition up is to.
Do you want to have the agenda presented?
The motion,
as
yes.
amended?
Yes, so I need a motion to.
So I'll move to approve the agenda amended as presented.
Thank you, Director Boyles. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Black-Lance. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, next up, we'll go right into recognitions. And our first recognition is a rather sad recognition, and that's the fact that our longtime director, Bob Nystrom, resigned as of yesterday. So he is sitting at the board table for last time.
Do you want me to go to the chair?
You can stay there, that's fine.
Okay.
Because he wants to share some thoughts, and
Yeah, we always get a farewell speech when a person leaves, so I thought I'd write mine up. So the main reason of my resignation is for personal, family, and health issues, and if any of you read the dispatch on Saturday, you would have read that. So how do you say goodbye to something that has been a love and passion for me for 17 years? My main purpose was to serve the children of ISD 181 in the best way I possibly could. Without the influence of teachers in my life during junior high and high school, I would not be the person I am today. They taught me to set goals and work towards them, work hard, and have a passion for what you will work in. They taught me that to achieve a profession, I had to work hard on my studies, as I had not worked hard enough on my homework previously. They stayed on me, and it worked. So first, I want to thank the teachers of this district who work many extra hours to improve student achievement. And to those teachers that take that extra time with a student who has potential but is not living up to it, you have made a difference in my life and for many other students who have gone on to successful careers. So to the present school board and to all the school boards I've served on for the past 2 decades, thank you. The board works collectively as 6 members to make our school district the best in the state. However, it's also the hard work of our teachers and staff, the administrators, the principals, the paraprofessionals, the cooks, the custodians, and the secretaries who make this district special. If you run into one of these staff members when you're out and about, say hi, thank them for their service, and give them a hug if that is appropriate. The public has no idea how hard they all work towards the best interest of the students. And to the public, thank you for supporting me for 17 out of the past 20 years. I think school boards, more than any elected body, are under the microscope more because it involves people's children. This has certainly come to the forefront since March 2020 due to COVID. We as a community, state and country have become very divided over how to manage this issue. School boards will take in the information they receive at meetings, public input, and other sources. Remember, we're human just like you. We try to make the best decisions based on what we receive from the professionals. This has created conflict in our community as people disagree intensely on this issue. We will get through this. While COVID may never go away, just like influenza, we'll learn to manage it, and sometime in the near future, we won't have to wear masks. In closing, it has been my great honor to have served with 5 great superintendents. I served with Jerry Walseth, Steve Residlo, Clint Willert, Bob Gross, and for the last 5 years, Lane Larson. I thank them all for their past and present commitment to ISD1, all very talented and like-minded individuals. I'm also proud of the fact that I was part of the building of Forest View in 2003, the rebuild of the football stadium in 2013, Blueprint 181, which construction began in 2018, and we improved all our buildings and built a new school in Baxter Elementary and the new Gitche Zibby Center for the Arts, a passion of mine for many years. ISD 181 is a school district that attracts the best of the best in superintendents, principals, teachers, and support staff. We're known around the state for academic excellence. This could not have been done without the support of our generous community who also love this district and want it to keep going. Thank you to you all.
Heidi, do you want to grab Bob for a second? He's trying to run out of here, and we're only going to let him walk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elvis has left the building.
Trying it anyway.
Come back in for just a second.
Come on in for a second.
Well, I thought it was fun. I don't want to make a big fuss.
You are so modest.
So cute.
So, I just want to say that it's been a privilege to work with you, and I've been on this board now since 2006, and I remember when I sat right where Charles is, and you were so gracious and kind to me. I was so nervous, not like our new board members that just came right in. I was quite nervous, and you were just quite the mentor for me, and you've been an amazing board member all this time. We wouldn't have as good of a school district as we do without good board members, and you've been one of the longest. And what I'm really sad about is you were the longest running and the oldest. And now I think I take over both of those. So anyway, thank you for all your work, and I know you bleed blue, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth.
Yeah, and Bob, I echo Ruth's comments as well. You know, this is my 12th year, and you've taught me a lot. Your passion is what is, I think, the most remarkable, you know, for our community. You're our historian too. There's nothing that you don't forget, and you know everything about this community. You've just been such a blessing to our community, to our district, and we'll miss you on the board. See you in the community.
Okay.
It's tough to see you go, Bob. I've had the opportunity to know you for a number of years now. I first came to know you as simply a man of God. We both attend Lakewood Evangelical Free Church, and that's the first person I came to know, both you and Rachel. And I appreciate your love of my family and I, and your mentorship of me. And I am so appreciative of who you are as a man of character. And it's been fun to see how you roll as a board member, as a community leader, and then even later years now as a father, as I've been able to see you with your children as well. And I thank you for that. And thank you for investing in me when I was just a person you didn't know. And Bob, you're going to be missed. You leave a large wake behind you, but it's a positive wake. And I appreciate all you've done.
Thanks, Charles.
Well, Bob, I hope you only feel positive vibes from us as you go. You know, this is a tough time, like you said, and I hope you just ride the wave of all the good things that you've done. And Ruth talks about it not being, us not feeling nerves. There's always nerves sitting here, and there are especially nerves when you're somebody thinking about stepping up to run for a role like this and to be involved. And you are nothing but kind for me. That I didn't know you extremely well. However, I didn't even hesitate to approach you and ask you questions and seek guidance. So thank you for your approachability and your kindness and just your warrior spirit. We will miss you.
Thank you.
A lot of echoing from 5 other people, not you two so much because you've been on here so long. But I didn't even know Bob a year ago, but Bob, and the kindness that he's extended to everybody, had lunch with me one day when I had first filed to run for school board, even though he was on the same ballot as I was, gave me pointers on what to do, what not to do. Evidently I didn't listen because I ended up getting elected. Then I came to a board meeting to present to the existing board at the time. Lane had invited everybody to come and present, and I was the first of all the candidates to do it, so I didn't really know what the ground rules were. So in uncharacteristic style, I was going to be brief. So I sat at that chair and basically said a couple of sentences and got up to leave, and Bob stopped me and drew me out based on the lunch that we had had and gave me an opportunity to expand in front of the board and in front of the cameras. So to me, that might not seem like much to everybody, but it's a great illustration of the actual kindness that is in Bob's heart. And Bob, your fingerprints are literally on thousands of diplomas that have been handed out to the kids that have walked out of this high school. Your fingerprints, figuratively, are on even more than that. Thousands and thousands of kids that have come through this school district over the last 20 plus years that you've been involved in this district. And no matter whatever else you sit at home and think about tomorrow, when you're not a member of this body anymore, remember that and remember the positive impact that you had on all of those lives. That is your legacy, and I'm honored to have served with you, even if only for 11 months. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Bob, I'll never forget the first time I met you. I was sitting in that chair right over there in an interview with all of you guys. And I remember, because as a candidate, you're reading the board as much as the board is reading you. And I remember watching you, and you kept going like this, and you kept shaking your head, and you'd look at Reed over here on this side and so on. And I just remember coming out of there feeling like this is the board I want to work with. This is the team that I want to work with, because I could tell that everybody had the best interests of our children at hand. And Bob, ever since I've gotten to know you, I feel exactly the same way. You do your homework. To be a board member is a lot of work. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of time. I don't think anybody has any idea how much work it is to be on the board. And you always came prepared. You always put the best interests of our children first. And whether it was all these things that you talked about, whether it was Forest View or the football field, if it was supporting ISD 181, if it was contract negotiations, if it was getting the Gitche up and going and giving a beautiful dedication, you always gave your heart and your soul, because as so many people have said, you bleed blue. And I know that I speak for everybody that we are absolutely honored to have had the privilege to work with you. We want you to come back and see us often. And just thank you so much for all of the love and support you gave all of our kids. And like you said, think of the lives you've touched. Thousands and thousands and thousands of children during your years of service. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thank you all.
You've been awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we will be having a reception before the next school board meeting from 4:30 to 5:30. So that'll be another time to.
Yeah,
Spend
in
some
room
time.
200. So we'll have more room for people to come have some cake and ice cream and a little bit of coffee, and just congratulate Bob again. So, and his wife Rachel will be with.
Yes,
So that'll be fun.
that will be fun.
Yeah.
So do you want to continue on
Sure,
with the rest of the
I will.
recognition?
This past week we really had a lot of incredible things happening at the school district. And one of my very favorite things that happened was Thursday afternoon, when our own John Erickson, who's sitting in the front row, led us with the 2021 Distinguished Achievement Hall of Fame banquet, or not banquet, presentation for the class of 2021. And John and I had an opportunity to visit a little bit earlier today, and I tell him this every time we do one of these Hall of Fames, that I am just in awe at the high quality of graduate that has come out of Brainerd Public Schools and the difference these people have gone into this world and made as a result of the foundation that they got right here at ISD 181. So it was an honor to meet the following 4 people. Elsa Hash Garrison, a 1990 Brainerd High School graduate who has spent decades as an international professional sports photographer, and at the last board meeting dedicated 2 of her most famous photos, the picture of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna, and the soccer, I just lost her name for
Megan
a second.
Rapinoe.
Oh, thank you, yep. It's just incredible, and she shot the football game the other night, over 8,000 pictures that are in our archives right now from the pictures that she took while she was here. Amazing.
Not
And
to
then
mention the opportunity, right, that she gave our students. I thought that was really neat. That
Yeah,
she,
tell about that, that was
well,
cool.
I saw it from the sidelines and from the shots the next day. She allowed our students with the big professional cameras on the sidelines getting that experience of what it's like.
Yeah.
I think they were yearbook students, right, yearbook photography students, so.
She went into the classroom all day on Friday morning and helped them learn how to use these big cameras, and they were out there filming as well. And then yesterday, she was at the Minnesota Vikings game.
Wow.
Shooting that. So she went from the Brainerd Warriors to the Minnesota Vikings all within 12 hours. So pretty amazing. A Brainerd grad. And Elizabeth Betty Nolan Gowan, a 1938 Washington High School graduate, from this building right here, which eventually became the Brainerd High School, and an extremely renowned journalist. And so her daughter accepted the award on her behalf, and we were just really honored to have her speak to us. Brigadier General retired Mark Ness, a 1968 Brainerd High School graduate who served 27 years with the Minnesota Air National Guard, and he piloted one of the last 3 C-130 evacuation flights out of Saigon during the war. And so, and many of those flights were shot down as they left, and he brought all of his people home safely. And Jessica Kramer Ryan, a 1990 Brainerd High School graduate who spent 22 years as an attorney and a tribal court chief judge, and now serves as an advocate within and beyond the Native American community and works at Hennepin Courthouse in Hennepin County. Amazing individuals, and it was just a privilege to have them talk to our kids and be able to share their stories and their journeys and the importance of education and what they got as a foundation right here and how it's blossomed into just wonderful careers. I also want to take this time, if you've had a chance to go to Lowell Elementary School, to thank Lowell's new barn. The front entrance of Lowell, when you walk in, has just this beautiful barnwood wall that welcomes people to Lowell Elementary School. So we send our thanks to Lowell's new barnwood and metal entryway sign, which was recently built and installed at the open house on Tuesday, September 21st. The barnwood behind the metal was made by Brett Carlson and was paid for by an anonymous donor. The metal on the sign was designed and installed by Metalwork Incorporated, which is owned by Ryan Berg, a 2017 graduate of Brainerd High School and a graduate of the CLC welding program in 2018. If you get a chance to stop by Lowell, all you have to do is walk in the front entrance, and there it is. It's just stunning. Congratulations to the homecoming court, Era Anderson, Mitchell Deegan, Ethan DeRozier, Eden Ekstrand, Grant Gardapi, Devin Knopf, Raya Stroot, Nathaniel Strayling, Greta Schlomer, Emma Tautges. Congratulations also to Era, Aiden, and Greta, who were selected as the 2021 Brainerd Warrior Senior Homecoming Ambassadors. That ends my report.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a busy and fun week last week around
Yeah,
here.
it was really fun, yeah.
It was. Okay, next up we have public input. And I think there's about 8 or 9 of you that want to address the board. We welcome your comments. Please remember, we need to comply with board policy 206. We enforce a 3-minute limit per person speaking. And please do not make any complaints or allegations against students or employees. These may not be discussed due to data privacy. They should be submitted in writing to Superintendent Larson. And there will be no verbal interaction or question and answer with the Board of Education or the Superintendent of Schools during this period. If you have questions, we will note them and get back to you. So Heidi's gonna,
Downstairs, upstairs first, so they're not delayed.
okay.
I just love my math.
The vertical mic is on and ready for people.
Okay, ready? So I want to say thank you, Bob, wherever he went. I was really proud of him for standing up and saying, talking about the LEC, the Lincoln Educational Center. I think that our history is important, and I wanted to thank Bob for that, but obviously he stepped down, but I can still thank him. Director Boyles and Hagelin were correct in what they had heard when the mask mandate was put in place. We all heard the same thing, that the masks, if there were low or no if COVID cases, they would be no mask for the kids. And that's what we all heard, and that's what we assumed we heard. So, you know, I don't know where that's going. Removing the king and queen, you know, the concern that I have about what happened is the students that came forward and talked about what happened, will they be, how will we know that they're not being reprimanded or being treated equitably, if you want to put it that way? Being treated equally, equally is probably a good thing. I know that the students, there were students that actually came to me and different ones and mentioned what had happened. Whether they removed the king or queen, I mean, it would have been nice if it would have been the student council that would have done it. But I would like to know, to make sure that those people are not chastised. The other thing that I'd like to say is I still haven't heard about Timothy Lensmeyer. Is he overseeing our equity council? Is he hired by the district? And what happened to all those books that were bought that were supposed to be given out on April 6th of this end of the school year? And I still haven't quite got that down as far as is he or isn't he part of the school district? Is he being paid anything from the school district and how much? And I've asked that many times, and I know that Ruth contacted me, and so did Director Boyles, Director Nelson and Boyles. But I still don't have a clear, is he here or isn't he?
So if we told you he isn't here, I'll just respond to that one because we.
Right. And I know
did tell you he
that's a
isn't here.
contract that you guys probably didn't see or didn't, you know, but it's something that is concerning to me that these books were bought and he was going to give a presentation. The presentation didn't happen, but is he still overseeing the equity?
It has nothing to do with our equity.
181.
So I need to make that clear. He has nothing to do with our equity team.
Okay. Okay, I'm
Not
going
supposed to
to
respond,
take
but I
you at your
just can't
word.
let that out
So
there,
I don't know
so.
if 3 minutes is up, but there
Okay,
you go.
thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Hello, Dale Mink, Brainerd, Minnesota. I've still got a kid in our school district. First, I want to lead off with thank you to the school board for everything you've been doing for our kids. I know it's been rough the last, I don't know how long, but, and then I'd also like to just give my appreciation for Bob Nystrom and the many years that he's put in. I guess my comments have less to do with mask mandates or anything that the school board is doing. I guess it's more to address a common problem that's kind of cropped up since the divisive rhetoric from some of the parents who come here and talk at you. You know, things from CRT to mask mandates, all under the guise of free speech. I've noticed an uptick of bullying, which I think has roots in these parents who come in here and yell at you about things that don't even have anything to do with the district. We've got things from chants of white power at our pep rally. We've got LGBTQ kids who are getting assaulted at the homecoming game. We've got a case of an Instagram account of people stalking LGBTQ kids who are showing affection to one another in our schools and posting those on Instagram. And I guess what I'm trying to say is shame on you parents who are teaching your kids that this is okay by railing against equity and, you know, safety for our kids. This has nothing, I guess my comments have nothing to do with the board. I know you're probably aware of this, and I know our teachers are really working hard to make sure that our kids have a safe and equitable learning environment. But I guess my concern has gone from mask mandates to the safety of our kids, because this divisive rhetoric has really increased the risk for certain kids who are coming to this school. And I would just say, shame on you parents who are allowing this to happen. Thank you for your time.
Next is Aaron.
I shot from the hip last time, so I made notes this time because, you know, consistency. All right, so I'm going to kind of echo what was just said. I just wanted to thank all of you for everything that you do here. I obviously am not a member of the school board, but having been part of different nonprofit boards, I know that that is an endeavor in and of itself, and you all are responsible for a very large institution here in our community, and it's a lot of work, and you deal with a lot of things that don't show up here necessarily, or that isn't seen during these meetings. And so I just wanted to thank you all for your efforts that you put through here. I also wanted to, there we are. I wanted to express my thanks for the continued safety practices in school. My primary concern for both of my children who attend school in this district this year was really that they have a consistent school year. You know, one of my kids is flighty and essentially made of elastic and can bounce back from anything. I have another who is very much likes to know the routine and the structure. And so being able, you know, that we've been able to continue to go through school and with these safety measures in place, not have his or both of my students' structure disrupted, has been really fantastic all around for us as parents and for them. And they're just overjoyed to be seeing their friends again. So thank you for that. I also want to recognize and commend the efforts to have, I know that you all were part of the conversation for, you know, shifting some of the homecoming traditions to make them more inclusive. And I think that's incredibly important, not only for our school district, but for our community at large. I've worked with youth and families for almost the entirety of the 11 years I've lived in the Brainerd area. And one of the youth that I have most recently worked with started college this year. And during their orientation was told that this incoming freshman class was the most diverse class that they've seen coming in. And so I think that by our district continuing to support inclusivity, diversity, equity is really important, because if you zoom out of the Brainerd area, that's kind of where the rest of the world is. And we're sending our kids into a very global world where they're going to encounter other people who look different, love different, believe different. And so it's doing a disservice to our students to not catch up with some of those practices. You know, if we want our community to succeed and thrive,
30 seconds.
thank you, long after we're gone, you know, we need to be focusing on that. And just, again, thank you for your commitment to students and community. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
John Erickson?
No comment, Madam Chair.
Ed Shaw?
Hi, Ed Shaw Brainerd, parent of 2 kids who go to Lowell, and gonna echo what a couple other people have said. A majority of people, a majority of parents out there, we don't want to go back to the 19th century. We don't hate people because they're different. We want to move ahead. We want our kids to be part of a global world, to deal with different people, and to welcome everybody here, regardless of who they may be and who they may love. And most people out there take something that's killed 700,000 people in this country, COVID, seriously. And wearing masks at school is a pretty small step to take, a very minimal step. Why it's even controversial is baffling. It's no more an infringement on your freedom than wearing a shirt to work or wearing shoes. But whatever political symbolism or fantasy it's got tied into, or people out there will still think that COVID doesn't exist, or it's a flu, or horse dewormer will fix it, who knows? But whatever you do, don't give in to that. If we give in to that, if we expose our kids to this disease more than they have to, we are in serious trouble, both A, endangering our kids, and as our basic credibility as an institution. The majority are behind you, the majority will back you, the majority will not allow bullies to take over this district and determine policies in this school based on whatever fantasy of denial or whatever they're motivated by. Thank you.
Mary?
I'm the grandparent of students in the Brainerd schools, and I want to thank you for keeping them as safe as possible for COVID, for making people wear masks. It's my understanding that there's one class that had a COVID student. It's been over 2 weeks since then. No one else in that class has gotten COVID. I think that says all that needs to be said about the efficacy of masks. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Marty?
I have recently become keenly aware that the effort of people, and basically all people, experts at a national and a local level, to predict what COVID-19 and its variants will do has turned out to be a failure. There is no one, in my opinion, who can predict with certainty who will be vulnerable to this virus. Why do I bring this up? I am a new grandfather as of last week. As I held my granddaughter, I thought about how I could protect her from any medical issues related to this virus. It seems like a natural question for me to ask in today's environment. Some things are very clear to me. States with the highest vaccine rates have the lowest infection rates. Countries that have stopped aggressive treatment measures have done so because they have utilized vaccine and mask mandates. In our very community during the last weeks, 9 out of 10 of our ICU beds have been occupied by people with COVID. These are people on ventilators, and that's frightening. I received a call this morning that my surgery scheduled for tomorrow had to be canceled because people with COVID have caused a bed shortage, and these are people who have not been vaccinated. When I combine these two ideas, that no one can accurately predict how the virus will travel, and that there are ways to be protected, I conclude that a conservative, science-based approach is best for all, but especially for our school-aged children. Making a mistake in the direction of requiring masks, shots, distancing is no mistake at all. Decisions made by this school board to protect the student body will have the effect of not only helping protect our students from immediate illness, but also from the potential for long-term residual health complications. A conservative approach seems to me to be the best for our children. There will be no do-overs once our children are infected. Thank you.
Terry?
I just have one observation and one comment. First of all, the observation is kudos to the school board for the way you said goodbye to Bob. Psychologists have said that the way you say goodbye in relationships are probably the way you will say goodbye when you die. The way you are now is the way you will be more and more and more. So thank you for the way you afforded your colleague fond farewell and did it very graciously. That's an observation. Secondly, a comment. I haven't been to a school board meeting as often as I have been in the last 4 months in my whole life. And I have to apologize because I think I've taken for granted what school boards do for our students year after year after year. So I've learned a tremendous amount. But the best thing I want to say is you have taken responsibility for doing what's best to protect our students based on the matrix you've developed to help you know when to keep these masks on and when to take them off. And I'm grateful also for the comment that was made earlier that when it gets good, take them off. And I think that's what we're looking for and hoping for. But stay the course until it's safe and keep supporting our kids. Thank you very much.
Izzy?
Hi, my name is Izzy Olson. I'm a junior at Brainerd High School. I'm representing the Coronation Committee, which is a part of the Student Council at Brainerd. When Miss Russ came before the school board on September 29th, a statement was made that we, as a whole Coronation Committee, were unable to agree on a plan how homecoming court should be brought forward to the student body. But we did have a plan. We, as a Coronation Committee, came up with a unanimous decision. We decided to revert back from ambassadors only, like last year, to having a king and queen and/or ambassador, if a student should so choose. Our committee was not informed of the decision to discontinue the homecoming tradition of a king and queen. We were told that what we were going to do instead of rather asking for our input. The tradition was taken away. As students in the school, we were told that we needed to spread the new idea of an above and beyond award as being a good replacement for homecoming court. Again, we were not a part of this decision. It has been said that the homecoming tradition is a popularity contest. Yes, that holds true, but not always. Please give us students more credit than that. You could say the Above and Beyond Award is a popularity contest as students nominate and vote for winners. Many other contests are the same. It was difficult to come to terms with this change as our tradition was taken away so abruptly and with such short notice prior to homecoming week. We would like going forward to keep our homecoming tradition of king and queen and/or ambassador if a student should so choose, and we will continue to be inclusive of all students at Brainerd. This type of contest does not exclude anyone, as the student body nominates and votes for a winner or winners. The decision has gotten local attention as well as national. From the reaction of our community, it is evident that the homecoming tradition should be continued with dignity and support. Thank you. Izzy Olson, Maya Nelson, Jada Benson, Avery Mulholland, Anna Anglin, Olivia Orlowski, Chase Larson, and Tegan Crumbeck. Thank you.
Jean?
Gene Getchker I live in Baxter. And I want to thank the school board for their efforts, because I know what you're going through or have gone through, having served on the Brainerd City Council for about 12 years, back before some of you were born, probably. But I graduated out of Washington High School in '78. However, my question that I really have is involves CRT, or critical race theory. It caught my attention back, I think it was in January. So I ended up coming to the school board meeting because I didn't feel I got a straight answer when I called. And I still, to this day, don't feel I've gotten a straight answer. It seems like it goes around in circles, and I end up in the same place I started. I may be wrong, but I would say that and in Bob's article in the paper, he said they don't have CRT in the school system. If that is the case, it wouldn't hurt anything if you banned it from our curriculum, any CRT. And so I would ask that that be done to assure us that it's not being done. And then I think it was Doug Kern had asked apparently a bunch of questions, but the rest of us don't know what he's asking or what the answers are. It'd be nice if there was some way that he could, those answers could be made available to everybody. The other question or point I had was on masks. Now, you seem to be, at one time, it sounded like there was no masks being considered. But we've apparently gone past that. And
30 seconds.
everything I've seen or read, and I get papers from all over, but nobody feels that masks do any good. They do more harm or damage. And so I think you should think that over again. And it may be better for the kids if they didn't have them. It sounds like it does more damage or harm than good. Thank you.
That's it for public comment? Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone. Next up, we have a presentation from.
Looks like we have one more
We might
comment.
have one more.
Sure.
Oh, we do have one more, okay.
Oh, sorry, Nick Hillman. Sorry, Nick.
I want to start tonight by talking about the mask issue. I work in the medical field, and I'm here to tell you masks simply don't work. They do not prevent disease. It says so right on the box. Remember, this all started, wear a mask for 2 weeks, flatten the curve. We are now coming up in the spring school year of 2022, up on 2 years. In the last meeting, it was brought up that when would we not need masks in the district? And that the schools with vax students possibly could be treated differently. Neither the masks or the multiple vaccines out there work. In the hospital where I work, we're seeing COVID patients, and the majority of those COVID patients are vaxxed. I have seen damage done to young adults and kids, like a 19-year-old female who had cardiomyopathy and elevated troponins after just 1 Pfizer dose, and a 16-year-old boy who has had 2 clinical heart attacks since being vaxxed. Is this normal? Pushing masks will most certainly lead to pushing the vaccine like it has for the rest of the public, so that in the end, those who are vaxxed won't need to wear a mask. That's not keeping our kids safe, which was another point brought up in the last meeting. The school is teaching fear by pushing mask mandates. The Bible tells us in Revelation 18:21 that the fearful are the first to be judged. Whether you're a young kid or an adult, when you have a mask on your face, you're constantly readjusting and touching it. Hands that touch multiple other things and objects that other kids are touching, spreading bacteria and viruses. So is this really accomplishing anything? Kids get sick, let them get sick, and develop natural immunity. You will not stop COVID by masking or vaxxing, just like we couldn't with influenza. They are both alike, like many doctors have stated. Also, did you mask the entire district during flu season in the past, or for the common cold? No, I didn't think so. It was also mentioned at the last meeting that there has been no guidance this year. I'm here to say, with a little common sense and a look at history, you can see right through the lies of our government and the said CDC. Hosea 4:6 says, "My people will be destroyed for a lack of knowledge," and that's exactly what this board has, a lack of knowledge. Even though 20 to 30 people tried sharing that knowledge and the real truth behind the masks and COVID-19 on August 9th. But maybe nothing was looked into out of pure ignorance or because public input doesn't matter. At the end of the day, students should be not be masked. It is the parent's choice. If the things really work, then those who want to wear it, and they should be protected. But don't push the unconstitutional edicts on our kids. And because the way the board has handled this issue, anyone who voted in favor of the mandate, I ask, resigns immediately. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you once again, everyone. We'll go on to our presentation, District Student Achievement Data with Tim Murtha and Sue Anderson.
Here we are again. We are back after a one-year interruption to do the district data presentation. And there we go. Sue and I are here tonight to give the assessment data review as we do annually, with an exception of last year was we didn't have any data. And that's really where I want to begin. Our data is different this year. Historically, I've always presented 3- and 5-year trend lines on student data for each of the Minnesota comprehensive assessments of the state accountability tests. And I've broken it out by grades and by groups, both students in poverty and student special ed and the whole cohorts. We're going to look at it a little bit differently tonight. We have a new opportunity here with the trend lines ending in 2019, no data in 2020, and the participation and lack of accountability mechanism from MDE on last spring's data means there's no way to connect dots to this data. It's not comparable to what's in the past. So we get an opportunity to start over. We get a new baseline we get to. Now, I'll provide you all the data, and you can look at how it crosses over. But when you look at the sample size and the way that the data is calculated, they're just different, so it doesn't make for a mathematical comparison. Before I get there, the other thing I want to indicate is, with this opportunity is, we were asked by the American Parent Indian Advisory Committee last year, and the board's response was that we were to disaggregate certain portions of the data more deeply than we had done so in the past. And so what we'll be able to show are the comparative group data within students of special ed, within students in poverty, against the whole group, and disaggregated by race and ethnicity, which is something that we have not fully done in the past. You would have to dig into our site presentations in the old days to look at it. So we think we have a better, cleaner way to demonstrate data. So the good news is this is probably going to be one of the shortest data presentations I've given in the last 10 years. And to help speed that along, I brought the very knowledgeable Ms. Anderson with us, who's our data and assessment coordinator. She will do the first half of the presentation, and I will look at the second half.
Good evening. This very first slide is basically our demographic of the school district based upon Mars reporting for last school year. By building, by race, by category of gender, special ed or non-special ed, free and reduced or not free and reduced. So this is just a general picture by building of all of our demographics this year. Oop, wrong button.
We're all buttoned up here.
Oh, there we go. Maybe.
There we go.
Okay. So basically, based upon the school board's request for more information, we have dove into some of our special education information. So this is a representation of our ethnic categories by the 5 most prevalent disability classifications we have in the district. There are a lot more than just these 5, but these are the ones that have the vast majority of the counts in them. And that is showing by those race categories as parents have identified for their students within Mars reporting. And then this is also their primary disability indicator from their IEPs. So this is just showing what we have in those categories. What this reflects is, as an example, under white, the 8% under ASD indicates that you have an 8% chance of being identified as ASD if you are white. So if you look at the black category, that is saying that that's a 15% likelihood of being identified ASD. So this is new conversations that we've had with our staff. This was the first time this type of information has been presented to them. So we're starting to work our way through it and figuring out how to work with it and handle how to move forward. The other part that this information can bring to us is something that's called risk ratio. And risk ratio is one way to show the disproportionality among groups with big size differences. So this is reflective of those students who are the total in the district by each race category. Now, it is excluding Asian and Pacific Island, Alaska Native students, because those groups are so small. It would be, it's too small of a group to even disaggregate at this point. So it's showing the total number of students identified in that race category, how many of those students have an identified disability, which then calculates out to the percentage, and the risk ratio is the difference between the disability by race based upon comparing it to white. So in this instance, if you were to look at black, it's saying that you have a 1.5 times chance of being identified with a disability compared to a white student. And this is just a little extra added. We took it to the top 4. Basically, the speech language disability was taken out of these calculations. It's another risk ratio look at what this is identifying as in terms of our students of ethnicity and how they are labeled with special education needs. So again, this was all new for our staff to look at, and we are having the AHA conversations now about how do we respond to this information? What does this mean for us? We also have the 4-year graduation rates, which we've always had this. This is an accountability indicator. We have not always indicated it in all of the different categories. Please note, as a district, for accountability purposes, you have to have a minimum of 20 students in a category in order for it to be calculated for accountability. These are all of the categories that we have indicated in our district. Not all of them will qualify. As an example, in 2020, the only ones that will qualify for accountability purposes are free and reduced, special education, white, and the all category. All the remaining categories listed up there had less than 20 students reflected.
And this includes our alternative learning centers.
Yes,
correct?
this is
Correct.
every
This is district.
district-wide.
Super quick question, Sue.
Yeah.
Is this, the data hasn't undergone any changes since the week before school started when?
This is the exact same presentation I gave at
That's
both the
all I
CIP
need.
retreat, I gave to the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. I will be giving it to the District Advisory Committee next week. So this is 3 out of 4.
Okay, thank you.
Now, and as an example, if for the 2020 4-year graduation rate of all students in the district, we're at 85%. our high school alone was at 93.5, just as a comparison. So, and also the expectation, the expectation on graduation rate is they want 90% of the all category graduating within 4 years, and the 85% of all subcategories. And that was supposed to go in place for the 2020 school year, but because we haven't had accountability for 2 years, it'll probably be for next year that it'll start as our basis. Consistent attendance. This is an expectation that 90% of our students will attend 90% of the school year. For us in Brainerd, that means students miss less than 17 days of school. The 17 days of school is any reason that you're gone other than a sports, school, field trip, that sort of thing. Those aren't counted in the calculations, but this is for illness, vacation, excused and unexcused. So the expectation again is 90%, at 90%. This is a little different look because we have it grouped together by bands. So it's our grade schools together, our middle school, and our high school, ALC and LEC together. And this is the consistent attendance. This is the accountability expectation. And again, we don't have any consistent attendance information for 2020, and we won't have any for 2021 either, just because of COVID-19. The state is not generating those reports for us right yet. So we'll get them again in 2021, which is why I think the indicator attendance is another one that's moving up the ladder. The expectation is going to have all students at 95% consistent attendance and all subcategories at 90. But I believe that will come out in 2021. And last but not least, this is an indicator of participation by grade level, by content area for the MCAs. COVID had a lot to do with the red numbers in 2021. We had, participation was required. They had to be in the building in order to take it. They could not do this remotely, and it was an option. So those families that had their children in distance learning, it was their choice. If they wanted to bring their children in to test, they could, but they were not required to. So the numbers are quite significant in terms of the students who did not typically participate. The years prior, the numbers aren't anywhere close to that, but.
And just, if I may, just to make it easier for people that are watching, those red numbers are the reason that Tim alluded to. We can't connect dots from 2019 to 2021. Because ordinarily, if those kids didn't take those tests in, say, 17 or 18, it would have counted against the overall numbers.
Correct.
Whereas last year, that didn't count. Correct?
Yep.
So that's what throws it off. That's why we can't compare them side by side. They are literally impossible to compare next to each other.
What is the bottom, the yes/no bottom one?
That's the 11th
grade?
Aggregate.
That's the 11th grade. The 11th grade is below, and then the year total is the aggregate of all.
So there were 276 kids in 11th grade that did not take the math test and 233 in reading. So you could tell that in the high school, there were way less kids that came back to test than in the younger grades.
Correct. Yep.
That's huge.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It was about half the class did not participate.
And what you're going to notice here is that there's no way to identify any grouping pattern to it. You know, you had different populations. Some chose distance learning for the entire year. Some groups were in and out depending on health of the group, of the class, of the building at that time. So what you're looking at is a best attempt by the district to provide an opportunity for students who wanted to participate to do so. Because there used to be, when the accountability measure is in place, there's a material benefit for performance on the MCA. And I'll come back to that in a moment. But so we wanted to make sure we provide the opportunity to do that, but with students who are in quarantine or who are out for an extended period of time or who had transportation problems coming in because they were in DL, you're not going to get a very hard put. And there's no way to break that down and identify subgroups within that. There's nothing disaggregable about that population. We just have to accept that that was part of the challenge of COVID. So the best thing we could do is offer an opportunity, and anyone who wanted to have more than one opportunity in terms of we weren't eligible on the day testing officially occurred at Forest View, we'll do a makeup day. We tried to accommodate, but there are times that we could not. We either did not have staff or the ability to create a schedule that did that. Okay, so again, that's why that data is not comparable at all. Okay. This leads me to my portion of the presentation, which is the student achievement data. Question, Doctor? Okay, sorry. All right, so as I previously said that the data is not comparable, the other thing that to provide transition to this part, the impact on students for participation is only part of the impact upon students. Okay, if we accepted these numbers at face value, it would be a reduction of what our historical practices would be and historical levels of success their district is used to. We did outperform the state. We did outperform everyone regionally, at least across the board when you aggregate all the scores. If you sub the scores out, Piers and Aiken have one test that was marginally better than ours. Okay, but so we're still achieving at a higher level. But again, it's very difficult to compare because I have no idea what the comparative or contiguous districts, what their participation rates do. That's not data we'll ever get either from them. It's not going to show up in an MDE report card. Okay, so the best thing that we can do is just take a look at where we're at and take a look at the impact on groups of children just this year to the best that we can so that we learn how to read this data and as we create a new baseline moving forward, that we're ready to respond to it. Okay. And I can't even tell you that the 2021 spring data constitutes a baseline because accountability will return next year, this coming spring for 2022. So that data will be calculated different than the 2021 data will be, most likely. We don't know until we get there, but every indication from MDE is that that will return. That's the data that will start the new baseline at that point. That's when we'll start calculating trend lines. I'll talk at the end of this presentation then about what should we be doing now, okay, and what other data we can look at. But first, let's take a quick look at the math data. Okay, this is going to be elementary, 3rd and 4th grade rolled together. And what you see is we're presenting the data in a way that allows us to compare within groups what is going on. So we have it disaggregated by race. So what we can look at is within the body of students who are FRP, free and reduced price lunch, what's also known as the educational benefit. These are students self-identified in poverty or meet the poverty criteria. We can compare how different groups were impacted last year based on this data. So if I want to use this data correctly, I want to look at the shade colorings of one group and compare them to the same shade of another group. For example, students who identify as more than one race, okay, for them, students in poverty, they were 48% proficient. That's the dark green, third one in, 48%. The appropriate comparison then is to the dark green solid line to any other group. So if you wanted to compare that multi-race group to white students, then that's 48% compared to 61% proficient, which clearly indicates that there's an achievement gap there. The conclusion that you're going to see based on this slide for both students in poverty and students in special ed, and you'll see it consistently throughout each one, is that race-based achievement gaps do exist in our district. Now, to create accurate context, we've provided at the bottom of the slide the size of the cohort of kids involved. So if you look at Asian students, there are 13 who are constituting that pool. That's a small number against the total number of students in 3rd and 4th grade, would be a little over 1,000 kids. So we have to make sure that we understand we're balancing that yes, they exist, some populations are smaller than others, but that's the opportunity this data allows us this year without the accountability piece, is we can start asking questions about this and having the conversations that we not necessarily have had as a district. And we can do it safely and constructively without shaming. Okay. Another thing I want to point out in reading this data is if we take a look at the special education status side of the screen, and let's look under Asian students, you'll see that there are only 2 columns. The blank third column indicates that there were no American Asian students who took the 3rd and 4th grade test who were in special ed. So there is no cell there. Your divisor would be 0, so therefore it's an undefined mathematical equation. So you have nothing there. If no student was proficient, and there was at least 1 student, then you would have a 0%, and you will see that in a couple other slides. Does that make sense on how to read that? Okay. All right, so there's 3rd and 4th grade. The rest of this will go a little quicker because you know how to read the slide. This is the middle school data rolled together. And this, again, offers us the ability to identify that there are race-based achievement gaps within FRP and within special ed. So we can't say that the challenge for some kids is, no, they're just poor, or no, they're just have a disability. Even within those groups, there are differences of performance that are identifiable and traceable through the data, and that compel us to follow up on what you mandated us to do with our work in equity, and making sure that we identify the ways for each child to succeed. Here is the math data for the high school. Again, you see the impact of a significant lack of participation. You know, with over 200 some kids not participating, you do have some 0% because of their small cell sizes. You also have some very close to no participation at all. For reading, you're going to see similar patterns play out. Elementary, middle school. 10th grade. In science, there are only 2 slides because the science accountability, our MCA testing begins in 5th grade. Our elementaries go through K through 4, so there is no elementary data for this. We pick it up in 5th grade. So this is 5th and 8th grade. Same patterns. 9th and 12th. Because our students take the science test relative to when they take the life science class or biology. So some of them are taking it at a different grade level than others. So it's not a standard grade level. Subgroups over time. Now this is going to look more familiar to you. These are the presentations. These are the similar slides that I've given you historically that show you the 3-year trend average. So I've given you 2017 through 2019. There is no data for 2020. I put the little dashed line in there to indicate that the data from 2021 is not comparable to 2019. But if you're just curious as to the delta between 2019 and 2021, this will provide it to you by level, elementary, middle, and high school. Math is on the left, reading is on the right. Science. Same structure. If we dig a little bit deeper into math proficiency by groups for FRP, we can show the same sort of pattern. What you're going to see continually is just that achievement gap working its way through the identified group and the total group. And reading. What we can see is the achievement gaps that existed within groups such as students in poverty or special ed continued through the pandemic and are reflected in the post-pandemic or the spring data as well. Math proficiency. And this is middle school math proficiency, I'm sorry. Middle school reading. Fifth grade middle school science. Eighth grade science. Here we notice a less significant drop. We do actually see, and this points to the change in the nature of the data. 8th grade special ed math increased its performance from 24% proficient in 2019 to 26% with a smaller cohort taking. What you're seeing is the effect of fewer kids taking the test. It just turned out to be a group of kids that were proficient. Okay. So there's no other way to relate those two data points. FRP status for math and special education for the high school. High school reading. MCA proficiency for the high school in science. I knew that you would ask for this. This was not part of my original presentation because we didn't have that data because the embargo from the other regions was still present. But these are the contiguous districts around us and their total district rolled together performance by test and compared to us and against the state. So in math, state average state proficiency rate was 44.2. For Brainerd in math, it was 49.4. In reading, 52.5. Brainerd, 58.4. Science, 43.1, Brainerd, 57.4. And again, it always feels good to outperform the state, but we got to be real careful of overreading into that just by virtue of the fact we have no idea how any other district in the state, what their participation rates were. They did not test necessarily under the same conditions we did. No one will know. But I knew you'd ask, so I pre-created the slide. Okay, so this leads us to really what's more important about the data as we work our way through here. The charge that the district senior administrative team gave to the teachers at the continuous improvement retreat was to instill in them the understanding that the board and the district committed to equity for each student. We want each student to succeed, and we need to find those mechanisms which support each student. We also need to acknowledge that race-based achievement gaps do exist, and they exist within the categories that are our largest achievement gaps. So when we talk about achievement gaps, our largest achievement gap is students in special ed versus the whole. Our largest group of students with an achievement gap is students in poverty. But we have to drill down deeper. Within those two, students in poverty and within special ed, there are race-based achievement gaps which play out within that level of programming within those categories. And we have to start addressing those consciously. So what we ask the teachers to be thinking of is what structure, how will you use the structures we have to address the needs of individual student? Because I'm assuming that one of the important questions the board's gonna ask tonight is, Tim, what are we doing about this? Okay, and this I'm defining as, we know that our students were negatively impacted by COVID. We know that some groups were more negatively impacted by COVID than others. So how do we bring this back to the levels of excellence and improve upon those levels moving forward? And this is going to boil down to really a couple simple things. And these are our focus areas. Number one is we have to get back to what we were doing pre-COVID. We have to get back to leveraging, this is what we call defining standard work. We have to get back to using our PLCs to look at student formative assessment data. We have to get back to our curriculum teams having the opportunity to examine the longitudinal data from their common summative assessments to indicate how students are performing. Now, some of this will take time as new baselines are created. But we have to come back to, that's the rhythm of our work. We were building really good systems before COVID interrupted. For example, MTSS RTI. There's an administrative and teacher team that's working on MTSS RTI, and they were doing that prior to the advent of COVID. But that interrupted that work. So one of the most important things we can do is come back to refining and defining and supporting the multi-tiered system of support, which identifies what a student needs at any point and provides that student with what he or she needs at that point, and who's delivering and who's responsible. The next thing we need to do is we need to revisit, again, this is work started pre-COVID, was the social emotional learning elements of the curriculum. it's not just an academic impact that occurred to students, it's also the emotional impact, the separation, the lack of relationship development, at times the isolation, the frustration with not being able to do things the way we used to do when what we used to do worked for me. Those sorts of things we have to be able to come back to and be able to mitigate and support moving forward. None of these things are going to make a difference today. We're looking at multiple years of work in order to bring students back to the level of performance that they should be at and then moving beyond. We cannot make up 18 months or almost 2 years of learning in one academic year. It will not happen. No district will do it. Some may claim they can try or promise it, but it cannot be done. This will take time to reestablish relationships with kids. This will take time for us to reteach routines and procedures. We're probably going to have to live through a brief period where discipline incidents are running a little higher because we're not used to being in school. And we're going to have to relearn how to learn. And there's going to be some patience and grace needed along the way. And in order to make these things work, we need to approach it with an equity lens that commits us to understanding that we collectively own all of our kids, each of our kids, and that we're collectively going to provide what each kid needs, and we're going to be honest with the data as we look at it as it comes forward. My hope is this spring we have much better data as the accountability elements return. In the meantime, what we need to be focusing on at the elementary level is returning to the full implementation of the elementary literacy curriculum. Last year, we reduced minutes of instruction during the day. There was an impact from that. We also know that doing guided reading on a Zoom or on a Google Meets is really, really tough, and that is understating it immensely. I'm not allowed to use the language that the kindergarten teacher used with me to indicate how hard it is. So we need to make sure that we're coming back to establishing those practices that we knew were successful. So we need to look at the full complete data that we do for our text leveling. We need to ensure that we're looking at our STAR data, fall, winter, and spring at the middle school and secondary level, because that's going to be the actionable data. The MCAs are just going to really have to set aside for a year or two until new stuff happens. And the STAR data and the text leveling data is data that we collect, we execute, we process, we review. In some ways, it's much better data because it's actionable data. I can respond to this in my PLC. And that's what we need to get back to doing, as opposed to using the PLC to plan and survive distance learning, which is what we used to do. So those are the elements of what we're doing. I actually went a little bit longer than I thought. Next school board meeting, based on this data, I'll bring to you the district and site CIP goals that came out of the data retreat for your approval. So you'll get the district SIP plan, the site SIP plans, and I will also bring forward at the same time the district's World's Best Workforce Plan, which again is predicated on the same data. Now, the World's Best Workforce Plan is not due to MD until December 15th, but it's essentially done the day after the data retreat. So now that I've done the data presentation, might as well bring it through and knock it off and get it taken care of. Questions?
I just have one. I know we did some summer school to try to catch some kids up and stuff, and it seems to me every child lost time. For some children, that impacted them a lot more than for other children, depending on.
Correct. What we lost was opportunities. Remember, an achievement gap is created by an opportunity gap or a lost opportunity. Right. So there was no lost learning last year. I'm a little uncomfortable with the term learning loss. That's the current buzzword for what happened last year. It's not. We could not provide the opportunities for kids that we normally provide. And that's the standard work we need to return to.
So as part of this plan, I guess what I'm asking is that time or learning opportunity that we lost, is there a way, like summer school, like extra learning time?
Correct. Targeted services for grades K through 8 and credit recovery at the high school. Those are the programmings that provide supplemental opportunity for either credit recovery at the high school or learning recovery if you're in grades K through 8. Mrs. Hopajoki, who is actually in attendance tonight, will be able to speak to this more knowledgeably on the November 5th. Jess, did we agree on November 5th? Okay, the November 5th meeting when she brings that forward. In the summer, So summer school, what we call summer school, summer targeted services, that's exactly what we were attempting to do. She'll talk in more depth, but we extended the learning day for summer school. It lasted longer than it used to long, and we did as much as we could. Staffing was a challenge, still is for any programming outside of core. What we're attempting to do is use our relief dollars to provide transportation and opportunity to do more programming after school at the elementary and the middle school, and to ramp up credit recovery at the high school. It may be somewhat dependent on how much staff we can find to do the extra work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I guess for me, one of the key takeaways the first time I saw this data was that, in effect, the MCA data is all but worthless. Except for one thing, like if we go back to one of those where the green line is, any slide would do, Tim, doesn't really matter. The only thing that I walked away from, and maybe you can talk me off of this, as we look at 17, 18, so let's just say the FRP one over on the left, how we went from 75 to 66, remembering that that 66 is reflective of the fact that the accountability mechanism is not in there.
Correct. They're not comparable numbers there.
Right.
If you're looking to compare numbers on that slide, you compare the 65 of 2017 with the 75 of 2019.
Fair enough, but where I was going with that is the sort of risk manager in me looks at that 66 and realizes because the accountability feature was stripped out, that artificially raises that number in my mind.
It might. It is quite possible.
So the idea is that if we're using MCAs to measure achievement, right, that number is actually artificially a little higher than it should be because the kids that didn't take the test didn't count against the whole.
Correct. The thing to remember about an MCA is never take an MCA score. This is the challenge of MCAs. I never ask anyone to respond to one individual MCA data point, because it's a dipstick indicator.
No, understood. Okay. The only reason I bring it up, Tim, is for benefit of saying that trend line, that's why it's worthless.
Right. There is no trend line right now.
Right, and there can't be one because 2 years does not a trend line make, right? Correct. So the reality is we won't have an accountability feature until they take the MCAs this coming spring.
And then you're going to
have another year, and then the third year, that's when you'll have a legitimate trend line to look back at. And I think at that point, you'll be able to measure at least from an MCA perspective, measure the gap.
Correct.
So I guess I'm cautioning people, don't use the MCAs as a way to try to assess the gap.
Right. There are other ways to approach this, and we'll do this as that new data emerges. You can break this down into, for the board members who were here in previous years, I always showed you what we called the fishhook slides. That was the cohort. I could show you what third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade for the class of 2018 did for every test they took all the way through. Okay, and there was a predictable pattern of performance. And then I could take the 2017, put it right under it. It's the exact same pattern of performance. And then I can put 16 in it and the same pattern of performance. So you've seen that data. There are ways to drill into that. So what you're looking at is, how did a group of kids in fifth grade do as they move to sixth grade? Okay, and before you come to conclusions, your analysis involves, okay, how different is that pool? How many kids came? How many kids left? Did the demographics stay the same? Or what was the delta on the demographics? If they're relatively stable, then you can look at, okay, in fifth grade, this is what they're performing, and you can even drill a little bit deeper into substrands and figure out the standards to that and identify standards they're having some struggles on. But that's as far as it would go. The value of MCA data is to the curriculum improvement process over time. This tells us fidelity of implementation. This tells us if we're doing the right things, but you have to look at it in 5 and 10 year chunks. The data that you want to use to drive instruction is the formative assessment data and the common assessment data generated in the classroom itself. So this is the PLC data that they look at, the curriculum common assessments, and then the text leveling at the elementary and the STAR data at the middle and the high school. You want to examine that to modify instruction based on student need and what's in front of you, because we can provide that to a teacher at their site, at their classroom level. So my third period kids, this is where they're strong, this is where they're weakening, I can make adjustments. That data is available. Okay, through that, but that's not MCA data. Different data is used for different things. MCA is state accountability and longitudinal. The data that makes change in kids' lives is STAR data and common assessment data in the classroom and the PLCs.
Any other questions?
I can talk data all night, you guys know that.
Just a couple things. First of all, Tim and Sue, thanks for your shortened report tonight.
Yeah, guys, this is shorter.
Second of all, though, it's certainly fun to be talking about this and curriculum and success versus some of the other agenda items that we've had over the last several months. So thank you for this. One of the things that I find a little bit ironic is the data, and I know, Ms. Anderson, there's no better data coordinator person in the state or perhaps nation, and, coming up with all this information. But I find it kind of interesting that, again, the last several months talking about inclusivity and equity and all these other titles that we give, and our desires to kind of all be one, and yet we break out the data by perhaps color of skin or perhaps, all these other categories, which I just find that interesting that we split it all out, even though we're trying to be as one. The two questions that I kind of have is, if you could go back to the charge slide, where it talks down towards the bottom, differentiation must occur in core instruction. So do we do things differently based on the categories that we have, race, ethnic categories? Are we teaching something differently? Because we have to get every group up to an 85% and above, right?
No, in terms of direct instruction, no. In terms of what we do, I want to come back to the first part of your analysis in terms of what you perceive as the irony of what we're doing. What the data shows us is what is sometimes invisible to us. We're a large, complex system, and people like me and Superintendent Larson and everyone else in the district, school board members, teachers, administrators, we make decisions but sometimes don't see the consequence of the decision until it comes out downstream in the data. So the disaggregation data helps us see what the system is successful at and what the system is not. So no one's done anything wrong. We're usually not conscious of it. So what can we do in terms of differentiation, changing things in the classroom? The simplest, most important thing, or simplest and first step to do is taking a look at what you're putting in front of students. Can each student or groups of students see themselves in the curriculum? Does it look like me? So that's a form of differentiation. It's a differentiation of resource. Are the stories being told stories that I'm familiar with from my culture and heritage too? Then when it comes to instruction, are we ensuring that we're executing instruction with what we call cultural competency, which is required for state licensure for any teacher? Do I have the skills necessary to not accidentally exclude a group? Are my analogies ones that you'd have to be a part of a certain subgroup in order to recognize? But if I'm not part of that culture, and I make that analogy, well, I haven't explained it. I've made it probably more complicated for a student. So am I aware of that? So it's about awareness and intentionality. Those are the things that we need to do. And we need to provide more staff development and professional learning around that. And that's part of what we're trying to do. So in that sense, there's not a black male reading strategy that you would employ to help black males read because your black male students don't read well, okay, which is in certain grade levels what our data would indicate. What we want to make sure that we're doing is that we're looking at evidence-based reading strategies that are good for all kids and don't accidentally exclude anyone. Tom, you and I'm sorry, Director Haglin, you and I had the conversation about the dining room table card, which was a flashcard years ago in one of our curricula. Okay, if I grew up in a household that didn't have a dining room, I'm not going to guess what that card means by looking at the picture. To me, it looks like an end table or a coffee table or a table. But the right answer was dining room table. That assumes a certain level of social class, which might not be accurate for that individual kid. And those are the sorts of things we need to be conscious of as we move forward.
And then just one, thank you, Tim, but Director Martha.
Sorry. I'm tired. These late night long meetings are getting to me.
You can call me Tom. Do you think there'll ever be a day that we can look at more real-time data? I think about this in the business world, that we make decisions today based on progress that we made yesterday, performance that we had yesterday, or perhaps even tonight. We make decisions that are real timely based on real-time data. And I'm just wondering if there might be a day, to Director Boyle's point with the MC, it's like, man, by the time we get it, those kids it's too late. Do you think there might ever be a day that we can get real-time data? As a teacher, I know exactly how my students performed last week. I know what I need to adjust with students 1 through 30, and have this data that we can make powerful changes on a real-time basis versus, year by year.
Oh, Director.
It's a loaded question. Maybe
it is.
Something to think about.
And I'll give you I promise to keep it under an hour.
I'm not helping you.
The response is no. I don't think you're ever going to get that kind of data in education. Let's remember that education starts with relationships. That's where all learning starts, is relationship between kids and each other, kids and their teacher, family and teacher. All that's what drives learning. So to have that mechanical data of productivity is never going to do this. I'm going to give you an example. If you look at the first grade spelling inventory, which is one of the key assessments we look at for data in the elementary literacy program, the spelling inventory may show that a student has been flatlined for a significant amount of time. And then all of a sudden, the light bulb goes on. So whatever the phonemic awareness mechanism that they were struggling with that was preventing the correct spelling gets solved. Then their performance jumps significantly. If we overreact to the flat line, we run the risk of actually ensuring the flat line, okay? Because you just have to make sure that you're doing the evidence-based strategy for a longer period of time. You're asking for the right thing, Director Hagelin. We do want to have a better pulse on student growth. And I think there are things we can do to get better at it, but it's never going to be a mathematical equation of, if I adjust this variable, this percent under this context, I ensure X percent increase. It'll never be that. What we can do is we can say that if a student is not responding after 6 weeks of, or 14 weeks of leveled literacy intervention, that it's time to try something different. That we can do. Okay, but that clock starts on when they started the intervention as opposed to the start of the term. It would be great if we could give people more data more rapidly, but I also think we want our teachers teaching and only assessing when it's necessary to assess. There's a balance there. For a data guy, I love the data. However, they need to teach in order to affect the outcome on the data. So we want that balance of how often are we assessing versus how often are we teaching.
Well, and can I jump in for just a second too?
Yeah.
I think we're underestimating our teachers if we don't think they're assessing on a daily and weekly basis what's happening in their classrooms. Correct. And adjusting their strategies. And the entire class bombs a spelling test, they're gonna back up and know that's something. So I realize that's not going to trickle up to us on a daily or weekly basis. Correct. But I just don't want to sell our
Right, and the
teachers
MCAs
short
are not
by
meant for that.
No,
saying
they're
that they're
not.
not
That's not what
assessing.
MCA data is about at all.
Right.
That's about system analysis. It's not about individual student performance.
Right.
Even though when they took away the you must pass the last MCA of your content area to graduate rule, they wanted to create an incentive to perform on the MCA. So what they created was that if you are proficient on the last MCA in the content area, math, science, or reading, that if you were to attend a MINSCU school, that you would not be forced to, at your own expense, take a remedial class in that content area. That was the incentive. So there is a material benefit for a kid's performance on the MCA. So if I go to CLC and I've passed the reading test, I'm not going to be required to take a reading remedial class because I can demonstrate that I was proficient. Then that's a class that I would have to pay for, will not count for my moving forward, which increases the likelihood that if I'm a student at risk, I might not graduate on time or at all. Funky things about MCA.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have our COVID-19 update. With Heidi Hahn, Angie Bennett, and Lane Larson. My head in the way.
All right. Good evening, members of the board, and welcome to another set of data that we're going to get to look at this evening. So after spending time this past week and a half, had a great conversation with Director Boyles and Director Hagelin, as well as all of you really trying to delve down into the data that would be necessary to make recommendations moving forward. Our goal is to present that data to you so you can look at the multiple points of data we have to make the best decision on behalf of our students and staff. This is our current data from Crow Wing County. We'll have some more that'll be released later this week, so we get this data directly from Michelle Moritz, Public Health Supervisor. When we last reported at the board meeting, if you look in that column that says September 12th to September 25th, at the time we met as a board, that data was actually 88.5. So if you're questioning why there's a difference in numbers, what happens is some of the data is delayed because the test is attached to the date the sample was taken. So depending on backlog of testing. So that number when we present it to the board meeting, so for now, for the week of 9/19 to 10/2, that number is 123.4 cases per 10,000. Next time we meet as a board, you might see that number go up slightly, it won't go down. Just so you're prepared. So if somebody questions why there's a difference in that data. Based on discussion from our last school board meeting, the chart to the right or the graphic to the right is what we had adopted. Originally, we did have some questions about when we were looking at cohorts or groups of 30. That was really designed when we look at potentially needing to quarantine a classroom or a group of students because of an outbreak. We really tried to mimic or mirror our data to the county metrics that were sent out. When you look at the chart to the left, this is data that's been gathered for the week of September 29th to October 5th. We are running our data every Tuesday night because it coincides with the best response we can get from the county. So if you look at the gray column to the left, the gray columns are all about our staff. The middle column is all about our students. And the column to the right is when we combine both. So if you look at the week of September 29th to October 5th, specifically for staff positives for that current week, we had 6 staff that tested positive, 26 students that tested positive for a total of 32 positive COVID cases during the week of September 29th to October 5th. Then you'll see our cumulative across, so you can see our running totals. So from the date of the start of our collection, the staff quarantine cumulative is 22, the student quarantine cumulative was 343, and then combined, and as well on the top. How we put that all together is then we've laid that out, and if you look at the bottom right, those are the total county cases per 10,000. And Director Hagelin and I had a great math discussion today where we got to do some mathematics so we could really try to take our district data and have that mirror a county measurement. And so what we did is our previous week, so here's what's great, and this is all going to be live to our public with your approval tomorrow. this is our archive charts. Oops, now it's advancing to itself. I don't want to do that. We can get it to open. So these are now the same charts. So let's see if we can blow it up too. For those of us who have smaller eyes. View, here we go. Zoom. Let's blow up to 150. My eyes are bad. There we go. So looking at that, then you can see the data for each category like we explained before. So if we go to the previous week before, which was, that's September 22nd to 28, we had 56. So I'm now in the bottom right chart. And so if you look at our cumulative positives for the week before, it was 56. So if I exit out of that, but these are all archives, so anybody can go back and look at them. So they always know what our data is. So if we would add that 56 to the 32, we actually had 88 positive COVID cases in our district. I don't know why that wants to keep jumping. So if we did our math problem correctly, which Director Hagelin and I checked multiple times, so we took that 88 cases for the past 2 weeks, and why are we doing 2 weeks? Because the Crow Wing County has 14-day case, so a 2-week period. We divided that by the total population, which is 7,321, and then we took that times 10,000. So that's how we get to the 120.2, which then you can compare our school district for the last 2 weeks to the county data of 123.4. We also work directly with Crow Wing County, where we're now charting every daily positive case in Crow Wing County with our daily positive cases within schools. Right now, this data is only up to date to October 5th. So tomorrow night, we'll meet with Michelle Moritz and we'll do it again. But when you look at our trend data, we are very much a microcosm of Crow Wing County. So if you watch the ups and downs, where you see it go down, that's typically the weekend, because there's a delay in the testing. When you see a significant spike, that's when you're coming back in on Monday. That's why we picked Tuesday to be the appropriate data points, because we'll capture the most accurate data. So every Tuesday evening at 4. We now have also created a dashboard. So you will be able to look at buildings. It'll be updated weekly, so you can see, this is Forest View Middleview School, for example. So up through October 5th, there have been 63 positive student cases, or 84 student positive quarantines, 63. And then if you look at the staff, there's been 5 staff positives and 5 staff quarantine. If you look at the colored charts, the blue is a student positive, red is student quarantines, green is staff quarantines, and yellow staff positives. So you can watch that trend data from week to week. Tomorrow, with your permission, we will have all of this live on our dashboard. So it'll be sitting right on our COVID-19 page. When they click on that, this is now going to the charts, but I will be able to go look at any school. So I can click on Nystrom Elementary, Baxter, and I can find the most up-to-date information.
Heidi, would you explain to our audience why the last, just as a reminder, why the last week is always smaller, because it's not complete?
It's, yep. So if I can go back, I'll take one of those. So let's click on Baxter, for example. So if I look on Baxter,
No, that's not a good example, is it?
no, because we tried to update it all the way through the end of the way. So we'll go back to Forest View. So it'll always be updated on Tuesday night. I'm gonna close back out of that one. We'll go back to. So since we're doing it on Tuesday when we report those weeks, but we'll go Tuesday to Wednesday. So there'll be an asterisk if it's an incomplete week when we report, but we'll update it weekly.
So for example, week 6 up there is an incomplete week?
At this time, yeah.
Because that's as of
So,
today or
because tomorrow night
yesterday
at
or-
4 o'clock,
Yep.
we'll go in, we'll put in all the data, so Wednesday morning when you click back on, then that full week will be there.
So for
Tuesday
example,
night-
that 23 is as of yesterday, today, on the bottom for week 6?
10-5.
Okay, sorry, I just cut it off on this.
Cut off on that, yeah.
Thank you.
So for example, I took a phone call from a parent today at Lowell, very concerned because they had heard that there was another positive case. Well, then we could explain, in Lowell, in the first 5 weeks of school, almost 6 weeks of school, we've only had 6 positive cases. So now our public will be able to go to their building, they can look and they can make decisions for their students based on what they're seeing. But I think the big question was, when can we decide, or when will we decide regarding face coverings? And so we tried to put the best data forth possible. We're going to make sure you have weekly updated data to look at and consider to make those decisions on behalf of our students and staff.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Well, and I tried to make it short because Tom said 5 slides.
So we
Did
can
you
trust.
do? Yes, he did. He said 2.
Okay.
So we can trust your math on that 120.
The first one was just a cover page, so really it's 4, and then all the schools, which are 13, are all combined on 1 page.
Can I make a comment or two? First of all, thank you, Heidi and Angie, for pulling this together and taking extra time since our last meeting.
Sarah, too.
And Sarah and Anne Marie, so this has been a lot of.
Sarah and for the-
Great work.
Yeah, for the whole team. I really do appreciate it. And what I was after a couple weeks ago, and you've clearly demonstrated it here, is because we want to look at it, some of us in the community want to see as a district how we're doing compared to the county and not just look at the county numbers. And that's why I was really striving for comparing apples to apples. And as Heidi said, I got a math quiz this morning, and when Heidi and I were on the phone, because I had taken just 1 week's and calculated it on a per 10,000. What's different when you do 2 weeks, and that's how the county is. So it's important that those in our community right now, if you do the math, if you take that by 32, you'll not end up at the 120.2. That's why you got to take the last 2 weeks. It's vitally important. We might want even,
We'll note
now that
that
I think
on there.
about it, we might even want to throw that on there. But this at least shows us how the district is doing compared to the county on a per 10,000 rate. Somewhat surprised that, we're just, and the graph shows it too, we're tracking right along with the county. It doesn't seem like, I was hoping that it would have been a lot better with our mask mandates and certainly with more, I believe, vaccinations as a percentage with our staff over what the county is, but it can go either way. So at least now we have the data, the graph, the matrix that should answer kind of when there will be greater discussion about potentially lifting the mask mandate. It's not like that's completely the only numbers, but at least it gives us a nice guideline now. So thank you both, and for the whole team. Sarah, I know you were quite involved with it too, and for pulling this together.
So our goal is tomorrow to also make all this information live to the public and have it posted on our COVID-19 page. So again, we have lots of families asking, and what I really appreciated about board members that came in, we could clearly show you what we have to do daily, if not hourly, with putting students' information in, following up with parents, the reporting we have to do to the state, the communication that happens with the county. So it is a lot of data to track, but we're trying to make it relevant data to our public and to our staff because we receive lots of questions regarding what's happening. And it's interesting with trending with the county, when we're a huge system across 13 buildings, yes, these numbers are going up and down, but you can see them happening in different spots across the district or in different buildings. So overall, things are staying very contained for the most part. We have not had to quarantine a classroom at all. I take that back. We did have an early childhood classroom that we basically, the parents just elected. We had 3 students, and so it was a class of 4 littles. The other part to note about that, though, is we are not seeing those were household transmissions. So that's the other part that's happening with the data is most of our positives as we track and parents call in. Typically, if a parent or sibling is testing positive, they're starting to see almost the entire household test positive. So we haven't seen that school-to-school transmission at this point, which is also a positive note.
Wonderful.
The other thing I really appreciate is how you guys were able to go all the way back to the start of the school. I know we had that conversation at the last meeting, and just all of you and Sarah with your expertise with technology as well, to bring that data so that we really clearly can go all the way back to the beginning of the school year and see what's happening to the data week by week. So thank you for that.
I will give all the kudos to those 3. I had very little to do with this. So.
Good
It was
moral
beautiful.
support,
Yes.
moral support.
A lot of moral support.
And you find a good Mountain Dew when it's needed.
I do.
Well, again, there's not enough line of sight for people in the community to understand everything that goes into this and how there's literally no blueprint or anything, and you guys just made this out of whole cloth because we requested it. It's just amazing. Amazing work.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work. No other questions, correct? Okay.
I think it's a later.
One quickie, just super quick. Can we go back to the matrix? Just, right, so in theory, to Director Haglund's point, where we would begin, or the admin, not the board, but the administration, because in our last vote, we empowered the administration to make the decisions on lifting. We're watching that bottom left number primarily, and we're tracking it against the matrix.
Correct.
So for those that are watching at home, 50 or higher, you can see what's in place. We're at 120. So it's fair to say masks are on for a little while yet, for sure. The good news is, as we look around the country, it appears that areas that spiked before we did are receding. So we're one of the top 5 states in the nation right now. Our numbers aren't great. So one can anticipate that those should follow the rest of the nation and come down shortly.
Yep, we hope so.
And that's where we felt that it was important as an administrative team that's tracking the data, that you can also see multiple points of data, right? So when you start to see different things happening in school compared to what's happening in the county or vice versa, we can respond accordingly to that. So we want to make sure you always have that accurate information, date to date, and can watch all the trend lines. And then I think there's different decisions that can be made. You know, one of the recommendations we've heard is when you start to roll back, could it please be activities and athletics first, right? So I think those will be decisions that'll start to come before you as we start to see those numbers hopefully begin to go down rather than up.
And as a percentage, our total district population to the county population 63,000 and change. District is 7,000.
7321.
7321, right? So,
To be exact at this moment.
oh, there it is at the top. So as a percentage, we're 11 or 12% of the total county.
And that's why we're kind of, like you said, when we talked about that initial county data, that's what this proves, is we definitely are a microcosm of the county. The county seat resides right here in Brainerd Public Schools, compared to, if you compare it to the other 2 districts in our county of Pequot and Crosby. But that's what's nice, Michelle is actually going into our spreadsheet and typing daily counts, but they're about 5 days behind. That's why we agreed to that Tuesday night, because you'll get the most accurate reflection of what's happening in that week.
So take out the trash, get up the next morning, check the dashboard.
It's so exciting.
Wednesday morning, right?
Give
It's
us an
Wednesday.
hour, Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right?
But we'll make sure all of this, and I think you have a motion on the
9:30.
agenda to approve that so we can put it out to the public, so,
Excuse me.
thank you.
Thank you. That was
Thank
great.
you.
And now we'll go into some action items. Approval of our minutes from the special board meeting on September 29th. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Hagelin.
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Boyles. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And next up to our consent calendar.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Director Blacklands.
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Sjogren. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And now new business, and our first is to approve the resolution. So this will be a roll call vote to accept the resignation of school board member Robert Nystrom effective 10/10, as we've talked about. So do I have a motion to approve? No one wants to do it.
I will regretfully move to approve the resignation of Director Nystrom.
Thank you, Director Headland.
I will second.
Thank you, Director Boyles. Any further discussion? As I said, we will be having a gathering before the next board meeting from 4:30 to 5:30 to celebrate, well, to celebrate Bob, I'll say. Okay. Okay, roll call.
Kevin Boyles,
Aye.
Tom Haglund,
Yes.
Ruth Nelson,
Yes.
Jana Sjogren,
Yes.
Charles Blacklands,
Yes.
all in favor?
Okay, and again, thank you for your service, Bob. So now we need to go on and discuss appointment of a new board member. So you have here a potential timeline, and we, Superintendent Larson and I discussed this a little bit, and I shared how we had done it in the past as a longtime board member. And we kind of followed that outline of, so today we approved the resignation, and then we're gonna have people apply who are interested. And then those will be received, and we will review them. These applications will be assigned a letter number, so there won't be names on them. And then we'll choose 6 individuals to be interviewed. And then we'll do the interviews, and then we'll vote. So before we even go through the timeline, I just want to make sure everyone likes this process, because this is not the process we have to use. But it worked well the last time, and I think it gives interested people an opportunity to become a board member for the next year and 3 months. 2 months probably it'll be. So any comments on the process?
Did you say that we would receive all the applications, right, as board member? But did you say their names would not be on there?
Correct.
And what's the?
That's how you have this here?
The names will be on them when they're submitted, but then, like Janet will probably give them a letter or a number. And then so you can look at them kind of.
So we will know the names. We will know the names.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I was reading this.
Okay. We will know the names of the candidates, okay.
Yep. And tomorrow, we've been working on the application, and that will be available tomorrow, so people can download that and they can type their responses and such right onto the document.
Yeah, and that's this document that you all have, so.
Correct. And that'll be available to the public tomorrow morning.
So, and just for the public's information, this is an appointment from effective probably not next board meeting, but probably the first board meeting in November. So probably around November.
Right. November 8th is when we would like to have the appointment.
November
because we have
8th.
30 days.
And then it'll be through December 31st of 2022. And then during the election for the other 3 4-year terms, there'll be a special election for a 2-year term.
Correct.
And just to be clear, we don't have the option of going to a special election until November of 2022 statutorily. That is not, we can't even do that. This is the only way that we can do it, is for the board to appoint somebody. That is, I mean, I know we all know that, but I don't know that people watching knew that.
That's what our legal counsel shared with us, yes.
Okay.
Are the questions, which are great questions, were those maybe from before, or?
No, they were not. We
Generated from administration
and then reviewed.
Yeah.
I saw them previously when you did too, right? And those are just the questions for us to review, and then we will have different questions when we interview the 6.
Yep.
Oh, there are gonna be,
Yeah, there'll be totally different questions in the interviews.
Gotcha,
This is just so that the board can choose up to 6 people that you want to interview.
oh, okay.
So tomorrow it'll open, and anybody that wants to apply can get this document and download and just kind of answer their thoughts to each of the questions that are on this. Today, what we need to do is determine the date that we want the applications completed, and then determine as a board when you want to go through and look at the individual applications, and determine what 6 or however many you decide, but up to 6 that you might want to interview. Then we'll decide when you would like to interview and choose the appointee. And then, but we would like to do it within the November 8th timeline, because we have 30 days from the time we accept the resolution that we should have a board member instated.
Yeah, so we really need to make it fit into that timeline.
Yep.
And that's why there's like blanks. And so one of the things we thought would be nice tonight is if you guys could look at your calendars and kind of talk about how long do you want for applications to be open? Let's see.
We kind of have application, I think that second October 12th date doesn't need to be there. So the applications are going to be available
Yeah, no
tomorrow.
problem. Yep.
And then what date are they due is what we need to, right?
Yep. When would
Yeah,
you
so that's the
like?
date that, after the office closes for the day, on that date, nobody can submit an application any longer.
And then the next day you would have access to start reading through the application.
And we kind of talked about like giving them like, was it a week or 10 days?
I think we talked about possibly 10 days, or.
Yeah,
was it
that's what I
different?
remember.
My only concern with extending that particular time frame is that if we have difficulty scheduling interviews, we've shortened our ability to squeeze those in, and we run up against the clock more.
So should we just give them a week? Do you
Well,
think
my
that's enough
suggestion
time?
would be, to, let's say, the 20th, split the difference. And so that's 8 days, 8, right, from tomorrow?
Well, and I think that would be great because there's MEA break that Thursday and Friday when
Oh, yeah.
they could be
that sounds
available
good.
to look over. Yep.
Do
so-
we have to publish the names of the 6 people who will be on, because it's an agenda item, potentially, it says here. So we just would need to take that into consideration, that we'd want to,
Be able to
right?
publish
Would we
them.
want to be able to choose the 6 by, and the agenda typically would be public
Well, the
by
agenda would be
the 22nd.
the 5th of November.
Well, no, the 22nd, to interview the 6 people on the 25th.
Oh, sure, yep.
At the regular meeting on the 25th, if you go to, okay, so we got rid of that second blank one. Then if you go to special board meeting, to review the applications, and the board will choose up to 6 individuals interviewed. Or we put in here, or could we use this as part of our regular meeting on 10/25? And so that's kind of up to you guys, if you'd like a special board meeting, or if you'd like to review the
So-
candidates at the public meeting on the 25th.
So it goes back to Director Sjogren's point, that if we make the applications due on the 20th, we would have to decide on who the 6 people were by 4 PM on Friday, the 22nd.
Or am I reading that wrong? Do we publicly decide who the 6 are at the
Right,
meeting?
I think you publicly do it at the meeting.
Right.
Yep.
So it'll be public information, everyone who applies, which is fine, that's typical. And then we would weed it down, the merits on people publicly at this meeting on the 25th.
And is there any statutory requirement on the applications themselves in terms of public access to those, or are those private for just the board's eyes?
I think they get made public eventually, but
Eventually,
not, I don't think that has to be public in real time, but it
So we
has
wouldn't have to publish those for the 10/25 meeting?
No.
Correct.
I don't think
Those
so.
would still be just in our hands?
Right.
Yep. You guys can do this application process really however you want. We got definite guidance from our legal counsel, and they said that there are no guidelines that tell you exactly how you have to do it. And so you get to determine how you'd like to handle it.
So could we consider just receiving by whatever the date, the 20th or whatever the date was? Can we just receive the applicants and can we just submit to perhaps to you, Lane, or to Janet, our top 3 picks? And if it means every candidate was in the top 3 amongst us, we're interviewing them all?
Sure.
I mean,
Well, that would make it easier, actually.
rather than meeting and then,
Well, right, and that's where assigning a number comes in handy, because each one of us would submit 3 numbers. And then if you have enough overlap, I mean, you could winnow that down if you wanted to, or you could you could say, we'll take up to the top 6 unless they don't meet a certain threshold. I mean, because in theory, each candidate could have as many as 5 check marks in their favor, right? Say one candidate comes in with an application, and all 5 of us individually submit that person as somebody we want to interview. But you could get a whole slew that have 1.
So let me just ask the question, you're saying the number 3, but if you're looking at interviewing, let's say you choose 5 or you choose 6, might you just, let's just say 5 to make it easy, okay? Might you want to choose 5 of the candidates? I'm assuming that there's going to be a lot of application for this, and.
There was the
Lisa-
last time.
Yep.
There was or there was not?
There was
There
just
was.
2, I think.
What? There was only 2.
I don't know.
Okay.
You weren't on the board at that time.
Huh?
You weren't on the board at that time. There was a lot of applicants.
I think it's
A
fair
lot
to
of
say that
quality
it'll
applicants.
be well above a baker's dozen.
Yeah. Well, I like that. If we can just send to Janet our top 3, and then we'll just look, there's often a natural break, you know, whether it be 4, 5, or 6 that we interview.
I mean, it's not dissimilar to what we did with the Get Ya Zippy
Yeah.
naming process, where that took a large list and it condensed it.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, so you still have a population that could be considered.
Okay, so you will submit your top, are you okay with 3, or do you want to submit your top 5? To
Shouldn't
Janet by
shouldn't there be
the-
some sort of a ranking process, and then mathematically you would come up with our top X number of candidates by us ranking them?
Yeah, I would agree with you that if
Yeah,
you,
otherwise we
if
could all
it's
submit
3
the
or it's
same
5,
3
you say
names
this
and
is
then-
1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I submit mine, right, let's say it's 3, my number 1 ranked application gets 3 points.
Yep.
My number 2 one gets 2 points, and my number 3 one gets 1 point, and then that gets scored.
Okay.
Because maybe Tom submits the same applicant, but he only gives that person a 1. And then that kind of washes it out a little bit, so we don't have to, then I think we could avoid doing 5 or 6 individually by doing that.
My caution,
We are trying to get down to 3. We could still end up, I just think we have to consider that mathematically. We might have to rank 5 down to 1.
I know I won't be in a position, just by looking at a resume or this application, to rank within that. I would caution making that judgment.
So just
off
thumbs
of-
up or thumbs down.
Yeah, who do you want in your top 3?
How do you
Because
rank them but not pick a top 3? That's ranking
just-
still.
Well, that's, just to pick the 3 that you want to bring in to interview. And if that's going to be too challenging, then maybe we have to go 4 or 5, but otherwise, I think then to rank is just, we're just looking at a piece of paper until we can see the character and have, the interview.
Yeah.
That's a challenge.
So on the application, which they will get tomorrow, it says, please complete the Google form with your contact information and et cetera, and provide thorough yet concise paragraphs explaining the answers to the questions. And then also please attach a current resume of experience to the board. So you will have that on each of the candidates. So their name and information, their answers, and then a resume.
So to that point, maybe we don't rank them, maybe that's the, but we should choose
Yeah, so
5. We shouldn't just
I'm
choose
okay
3
with
is
that,
what
but
I'm saying. We should
I would go to
choose
each
5
person
though.
recommending 5 then.
I don't
because
think,
then
we should- yeah, I don't think we should go as little as 3. I think we
Agreed,
should be
agreed.
5 if we're trying to
I
get
agree.
to 6.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable having
Yeah, I mean, we could end up with
more people to see.
25 mathematically, if we had 25.
Yeah, but I think if
Yeah, no,
only
it
one
should.
board member, I think there's going to be like this person's going to get 5 and this person's going to get 5 and
That's
then
fine,
there's
yeah.
going to be a break, I think, where there's a lot of 0s and 1s.
Well, that's different. So if we are recommending 5, is it guaranteed that the recommendation of all 5 of us is coming forward, or is it still only then by what?
I think it's
Well-
where there's overlap if.
So let's say I vote for someone and no one else does, that person might not get selected to be interviewed. Is that what you're concerned about?
Could happen.
Well, I think it very easily will happen.
Well, and it
If we
needs to,
pick
unless
5.
we want to interview 40 people or whatever it might come to.
Well, the time constraints aren't going to allow us to do that.
No.
No.
At some point, we have to,
I mean,
we have
that's
to
why
have
6
some
is the magic
process to
number.
whittle them down.
So in the
Yeah.
end, that, it sort of self-scores, Tom, at that end, because again, I think everybody goes into a spreadsheet, so let's say you get 20 total applicants that are put forth by one of the 5 of us, it aggregates up to 20 people. And like 3 of those people were put forth by all 5 of us.
Yep.
3 more were put forward by 4 of us. you've almost arrived at your 6 people right there. Unless there's a tie in there somewhere, and then we'd have to talk about what to do if we'd extend that to, let's say you've got, 8 people crunched into the,
So that's the downside of not doing it at a meeting where we can discuss how they're ranked.
But at the 25th, you would determine who you were going to bring back to interview at that meeting. So that the scoring would be done, and then you could look at the natural breaks.
So if you have a concern about someone that you really want to interview based on their resume, we can discuss it at the meeting.
Okay.
So just to recap, are we gonna rank them or the 5? Or
I
not?
think we're just going to pick.
not as we submit.
Our 5 that we choose, we're not gonna rank them.
We just would put 5 names forward of the X number that we get.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
fine with that.
I'm comfortable
I don't
with
know
that.
how else we would, I mean, I'm open to other suggestions, I just don't know how else we would get
Well,
to
the
a
only other
smaller
way would be
list.
to rank them, and then then we add up that, and that would create that break. I would almost suggest we rank it just in case we get into a conundrum, but.
I would be okay with that.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, rank them. Might be a good idea, actually.
So which is your highest? Is it 1 is
5.
your highest? 1 to, or
Well, I think we just have to just write that somewhere, whatever.
That could come to us from somebody
Yeah.
who's,
okay.
Whatever you think, Ruth, I guess.
I mean, I'm picturing this could go, I don't know, Sarah, I'm looking at you, to me, this could go into some sort of Google document, right? That it would do the math for us, basically, pick your 1 through 5 and.
But Ruth, I'm looking, where you're looking is to have that natural break, and that's gonna drive us.
Right, so at that point, we can say 6, but maybe it'll be 3 if there's a really logical break, or maybe it'll be 7.
Because I feel uncomfortable anytime there's a subjective process. I really want it to be as objective as possible.
Okay.
Not that we're doing anything sketchy, I just always feel better the more objective it is.
And so will the names be on the applications or not for us?
They will be.
They will be on, okay.
So we're going to rank 1 through 5. Pick 5, our 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Okay. Are you okay with that? You had some concerns over on the side of the table.
Me? No, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I could have gone either way on it, but I like that way because it kind of it gives you, like Charles said, it gives you another layer to analyze it through if it becomes necessary to do that.
And I mean, we have the ability too, right, to, I guess this is, I'm asking, is this me sitting at my desk only going off of what I see in front of me? Or is this me saying, hey, so-and-so in the community, do you know this person? Could give me some feedback, or are we to, based on what is on the paper, decide, or are we supposed to take in some feedback? I'm not saying I'm gonna put out a poll on my social media or something, but am I allowed to say, you've worked with so-and-so in the past, tell me more?
Will there be references? Did you do references last time?
Did not, but you can add that. You can add to the application if you'd like a reference or two.
You know, and I
from-
don't know if that, to Tom's point, you know, are we looking at gathering more information on these folks than what comes in on a piece of
You want a
paper or
cover
not?
letter.
You can put references are optional, I would say, if they want to give a reference. I'm fine with the reference.
I always appreciate the opportunity to find that context to who they are and what they're.
It's not going to hurt their application, that's for
Let's
sure.
make it consistent.
Question is,
Should we say submit 2 references or 1 reference, or? I think that all the applications should be.
Okay.
Right.
are you wanting letters of reference or a list of references?
Letters.
Well, that's going to.
Like our letter of recommendation?
That's going to take longer.
Yeah, now you're gonna have time to
I
process.
guess that's not what I was getting at so
No.
much, because
Reference
anytime we
just a name and
submit
number.
a reference, we're never
Somebody
going
to
to give a
know.
reference.
Maybe we should wait on the references until we whittle it down, because I think this time is just to look at what we get, figure out the best applicants.
Okay with that.
I'm fine with
And then-
whatever, but for me, references, when I'm in a hiring capacity, I operate under the assumption that the person supplying the reference
Yeah.
is never gonna supply a reference that's gonna tell me they're a doorknob.
Right. I guess I was asking more informally, because I want to abide by a process that my peers are using. Am I allowed to say,
I think we should wait till,
Or somebody that I know knows this person, am I allowed to ask that? You know, I'll use an example. You know, Dale, do you know so-and-so? Can you tell me more about that person? Do you know what I mean?
I
That's what
think
I'm
we want to
asking.
wait until we get that down to the.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure, because I think we need to be transparent in our process. We're going by, we're going to sit at our desk by
Right.
ourselves, read and rank simply on this. We're not gathering outside feedback or seeking information or.
Right.
Well, usually on a resume too, aren't there references already?
Often,
Names?
yeah. Mhm.
There could be, but to Kevin's point, no one's ever going to say something bad about someone who was put down as a reference.
I don't know, I've done a lot of references.
Well, I think you are.
Remind me not to use Charles in my next venture.
I mean, for references, you more look at who the reference is than.
Right.
But then again, we're getting.
Well, again,
subjective.
I think the larger concern in my mind isn't really so much that, it's adding complexity to a process that we've got a very finite clock ticking over our heads on.
Yeah.
And I
Because we're
just want to make sure
statutorily
that
driven there, we don't
conversation.
have the luxury of
Short-term.
postponing it if we're not on task like we could with naming a performing arts center.
and I want to know what my responsibility is and what process I am supposed to stick to.
Okay.
And then just to be clear that we have consensus, I just want to make sure we're okay with names on the applications versus them being blind.
I think that's fine.
I
yeah.
think they're on, right? They're-
I was just, when I read this, I thought it meant that, and so,
So
yeah,
are we
but I'm fine.
gonna, I'm sorry,
What's that?
are we gonna ask for references then?
I don't think, no.
Or, the reason is, then when do we ask for them? I mean, we could ask for them now, when they submit, and we just don't utilize them unless they're in the final 5. Then at that point. And still, if we decide
That's a
not
good
to
point.
use them as a board, we don't
Okay,
have to
so
use them.
just list 2 references.
It just might be a nice tiebreaker.
I can get behind that.
Okay,
Okay,
list 2 references.
we will add that to it.
And then my only other concern, we're all assuming we're gonna get a lot of applicants, and I think we will, but let's say we only get a few applicants. Do we wanna only, because right now, let's say we get 7 applicants, and we're ranking 5, do we wanna change that number if we don't get as many? Like,
Well, I think you can determine how many you're going to interview. Maybe you decide then that you only want
only
to
interview
interview
2 or 3.
3.
Okay,
So, okay, so
And
we,
again, that may still happen naturally, as Jana mentioned, because of the ranking process, we may end up with,
Right.
because of the way we all read the applications, we may end, I know when I do a lot of scholarship applications, this happens all the time. You have these people that just go through the roof and they're immediate, not that they win, but they are guaranteed an interview because everybody submitted them.
But I would suggest in terms of the ranking and submitting the 5 names, even if we get 6, we still submit the 5 names.
okay.
I
'Cause
just
we're
would hate,
ranked now,
then
yeah.
somebody becomes subjective again and then
Okay.
I would agree
I
with
get
that.
nervous.
Okay. So we have the completed applications are due at district office on the 20th. And then what time, when can you get them to us? If that's Wednesday, right? Of MEA weekend? Is that correct? Can you get them to us by,
That's a Wednesday, right?
wow, yeah. Is our office is
yeah,
closed?
we won't be here the 21st and 22nd.
So maybe the 19th, and
so
you guys
we-
can turn them on the 20th?
We get them the 19th,
Yeah.
and then you will get them, you'll have access the 20th.
Okay,
So you can look at them the 20th, 21st, 22nd, then you should get them to us by Monday morning, the 25th.
well, wait a minute, okay, we'll get them,
So our rankings are due,
The 25th.
Morning of
The
the
morning of
25th.
the 25th.
okay,
And the 25th is the board meeting, is that right?
Yep.
yeah.
And then at the board meeting, we'll go over the top,
we'll review what applicants
the
were submitted
review,
and
and
who
you
the
can
who the
decide
interview.
how many you want to interview.
Yep.
Should we put a date for interviews like on our calendars and start getting that, or?
What are we thinking for format? Are we talking about multiple board members meeting with individuals, or is like Zoom interviews? I mean, what are we thinking?
It's
I
a-
think
it's a
you do
board
it right
meeting.
here.
We do it right
At a
here, we're
board
all
meeting
here.
and let them interview, and like a 20-minute interview, but we'd allow up to 30 minutes in case it went a little long or needed a
So,
little.
and I think we should say what that date's gonna be
I do
on,
too.
on this application, so people know that they have to be here on that date, because we cannot coordinate
Right.
5 different.
There's no way with our divergent schedules
Right.
that we could even
And we
make
can
that
do
happen.
that right here. I mean, I would say we probably need some sort of a doodle poll or something.
Well, then if that's
to
true,
sit
if we
here
feel
and
we're a little
check
tight on
off
the
our
front on this, we could
calendars.
slide, because then we're sitting at 2 weeks from the 25th special meeting to the installation on the 8th, right? And in theory, we're talking about one one interview session.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what could we slide?
Well, I'm just saying there's flexibility in there if we feel like we're pushing too hard to get the applications, because it seems to me the labor-intensive part is going to be if we get 30 applications, reading 30 applications.
Don't you think we have to act on it, though? Don't you think we have to vote upon the X number of names that we're bringing forward?
Yeah,
At
but
a
I'm saying if that
meeting?
drifted into the, well, like you said, on the 25th, that still has to be an action item, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yep.
Unless we wanted to address it as a, I'm not a fan of a second special board meeting, but if we had to, I mean, I think we can make it happen as long as that MEA weekend's not a big deal to me. I can look at all of it
Yeah,
over that.
I can too. Does everyone
I think
okay
that's
with-
really is just looking at the five of us and saying, can we commit to reading however many applications we get between the
20th?
the 21st, basically, and the 25th of October?
Yeah.
I'm fine.
And then
And if that's the case, then it can stay that way, and then we just schedule the interviews for somewhere in that first week in November.
Which we need to decide tonight when we want to do that.
But I wonder if we need to have a little bit of flexibility. I would hate to someone that, is already scheduled to be out of town on that, if there's only one day and they have a real interest in being here.
Well, should we make it two, 3 and 3 or whatever? So they have two options?
Actually, it wouldn't be a bad idea even for the board here to have two different dates to do interviews.
And we could do 4 and 2 or.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree if you're talking to 6 people, if it ends up being 6, it's kind of like looking at
Right.
houses. When you're buying a house, you kind of forget what the bathroom looked like after the third house.
To that point, though, I think it's nice to do them on the same day, because from experience, when I do interviews on 2 different days, I find it a little harder to compare candidates.
I agree, though, we're at such a short window here, and if somebody wants to throw the hat in the ring, but they have a trip out.
Could we
work
accommodate a
trip.
Zoom interview?
Yeah, I would almost suggest we pick a day of, this is the day that we are planning to do interviews, but not make it a requirement that, that we are flexible if someone can't make that date. Whether it's a Zoom meeting then,
Or could they submit to us responses to questions that we give them via video or something like that? We have to give people
Yeah,
some way
I
to
get worried then that
participate.
it's tainted, that they're not getting the same.
Yeah. I think they need to come.
Right, but then we would count them out. We'd say you either have to come in front of us or
Yeah,
you
but
have
I
to
think
Zoom
to
with us on
Tom's
a
point, if
certain
we had
day.
an alternate date, that here's the date we're going to be doing the session, but if for some reason you can't make this.
Right,
you know,
then
we
we're almost gonna have to spread it out, though. If I'm out of town for a few days, separating an interview by a day or two. is good.
Well, you have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You get them the 25th, and there's actually,
Now that, I mean, if we wanna go into different weeks, I guess we could.
Well, I was thinking November 1st is, it's a Monday night. We usually can do, if that works for everyone. No, it doesn't work for you.
No, I can't do
Okay.
Monday.
So this is the hardest thing first. We
I
have to
know.
figure out a date that
That's
works.
why
So
I
let's
think-
look, okay,
That's why I'm wondering if Doodle Poll could come out and just calculate it for us. Is there anything saying we have to publish that date tonight?
it'd be nice if we put it on here so that, because one of the things that I'm gonna do is I'm going to send this timeline to the candidates too, so that they know what the time frame looks like.
okay, first, do we want to have them evening meetings? Does that work best for everybody?
To what?
To have them evening meetings, like 6 o'clock, 6 to 8?
Oh, evening would be better for me.
Yeah,
Evening's always better for me.
okay, so let's start from the 25th. We probably don't want to do it the next night, but what about the 27th or 28th?
I think that week would be better for me, October. Even the 26th would be better for me.
And I'm opposite, so that's where I think we're gonna be.
I have no issues with any night that week.
Yeah, I don't either. Any of those
The
3
whole
days work
busy?
for me.
I could do the
To be
27th,
here,
but not the
26th,
28th.
27th, 28th you're talking about?
Yeah.
What about 27th? Janet can do the 27th. I can do the 20th.
I'm good.
27th, Tom? Okay. So that would be our first
If we're looking
night?
at half hour, let's say there's 6, that's 3 hours. To start at 6, it gets kind of late
for the last things. Is it possible to start at 5 and go 5 to 8?
For me,
I thought we were splitting it up though, 3 and 3. I thought
Oh,
that
you
was-
are going to do 2
Well,
days?
I think we're
well,
thinking
that's
of
what
an possible alternative
That's what I
date.
heard, is that we're splitting it up to give people an option.
How about 5:30?
I'm fine with
Okay, with
5 or
4.
5:30.
5:30 to 8:30,
4 o'clock?
Tom buys the pizza.
I'll buy pizza if it's 4.
I agree.
I'm.
Do earlier.
What's the
Okay.
earliest anybody can?
I can do anything.
I could do that. I
4
could do
o'clock?
that.
Oh, okay.
It's just in the middle of the day, that's really hard.
Yeah, those noon meetings are killer.
Yeah, I could do 4 if need be. Could
4
you do-
o'clock would be fine too.
Could you do
Okay.
4 or the?
Yeah, let's do that then.
So we can try to get them all in that day, but if someone can't, what is our alternate day?
Okay, so the 27th?
Yep.
Okay.
I would say somewhere in between the 2nd and the 4th of November, or 1st and 4th of November, right? Because then if somebody's on vacation, it falls in a different calendar week. And then we're
think
back
the
to
next
checking
week.
our schedules again, just like we just did, and we find a day in there that we can all make work.
And it might be nice to do a different day of the week, like if they have Thursday night meetings or something. You know, it could interfere for both weeks.
But then
What
the
is
other counter to
Wednesday,
that I would say is this, right? Back when I was running last year, and I went to the candidates forum, we had some candidates who are running that, you know, ultimately, their hearts were in the right place, they were running for school board, but I don't think they understood that all the time demands that happen with this role. So that if out of the chute, if you're actively campaigning to be appointed to this position and you can't make a date over 2 different weeks' work, you have to question whether you're going to be able to give the school board the amount of time and flexibility that it requires from us. So I think that's another thing that we just sort of roll with once we're on this body, but that the community at large doesn't really, I don't think, understands exactly how much we move our actual real-life schedules around to accommodate our school board roles. It's not as easy as it looks. Of course, people are getting a front row seat to it right now, but.
So, and we for sure have to install on the 8th, is that right? You can't wait until the following?
No, you could go 2 more days and still be in the 30 days, but that would be it.
Oh, okay, but not to the next board meeting?
No, once we post the applications tomorrow morning, we have, the clock is ticking 30 days, if I understood that correctly.
November 2nd?
I can find
That's election day, but there's no elections this year, is there?
Yeah, I have a conflict that night till 6.
If it's an election, you can't hold a public meeting
Oh, that's
on an
right.
election night.
And so is there an election that night?
I'm assuming there's probably still maybe
Something.
county or, you know.
I'm good on the 1st, 3rd, and 4th.
Jenny, you said the 1st didn't work for you, right?
Can't do the 1st.
How about the 3rd?
Well, we're doing 2 Wednesdays in a row then, if you have somebody who's active at church or anything.
The 4th, did we?
4th.
4th?
We do the 4th at 3 o'clock?
4th doesn't
Or
work.
4 o'clock? It doesn't work? Okay.
And I'm fine with the 3rd, I just want to point out that we're then doing
Doing 2 Wednesdays in a row.
So just, why did we not want to do like the 28th for an alternate? Was that somewhat bad?
I can't do the 28th.
Okay.
What about the 26th?
If you can explain to my wife why I'm not taking her to dinner for my 32nd wedding anniversary.
That's the 26th.
I'll let her know.
Okay, Tom will call her, we're good.
She won't mind.
And maybe 2 Wednesdays are fine if we give people the opportunity to be there ahead of when activities would typically start, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and that's a lot because we have school board 25th and the 26th, 27th. So we'll let you have your anniversary.
We need to call another meeting for my description of how that will go.
The 3rd sounds like,
Third is,
it's just an alternate
Which is
day.
what it is, that's the only time we all have availability.
Alternate,
I'm
right?
fine with that, yeah. It's just the alternate.
So we're gonna try to get as many as we can the 1st,
The 27th.
27th.
Yep.
But if somebody can't make it, then we'll do the 3rd, but.
And then we need to realize too that we need some time for our deliberation process too, and does that get to happen
I would assume
off
that's November
camera or
8th,
on
is it
camera
not?
or?
No, we need to do it after we've interviewed all.
Yeah.
the
Right, but that's
rest.
what I mean, we have to realize then At some point, we have to have a scheduled meeting to say we will make our decision, right?
So do we deliberate?
Well,
Then two.
maybe it's the third after the last candidate.
Okay.
But doesn't that have to be an open meeting? Or are they all open meetings by definition?
I think these
But
are
if you
all open
do
meetings.
them all the 27th though, let's say you get them all done, you can do it yet that night
Okay.
and make
Sure.
that.
Okay.
So whenever we're done, then we'll do our deliberation.
Okay.
The other thing is, it's easier to put apples to apples if they're done on the same day rather than a week apart
Yeah.
too.
So yeah,
I
it'll
think
be
we
a long
should-
night, but
We should
hopefully.
aim to try to get them done
I
that
agree
night.
100%. We should try and do them in one night if we can.
Okay, so alternate date.
Kevin mentioned Baker's dozen earlier.
What happens, not that this is going to happen, but what happens if there were no applicants and 30 days pass by, then what?
You could just appoint somebody if you wanted.
Say the question again.
You could just appoint someone if you wanted to.
What was the question though?
If nobody
If we
applies.
didn't have any applicants, or we
Oh,
could.
no applicants, got it.
You will though.
Yeah, no, I'm,
We could appoint Bob.
That's funny.
so you need a motion to accept this.
Okay, so,
Right, and then I
Right, did
think,
we agree 4 o'clock again on the 3rd if we go alternate, or do we?
yeah.
Okay.
Fine with that.
okay. And then as far as, the only other thing before we approve this, the questions during the interview, do you want to kind of read the responses we get? And, I mean, I think we should all have some feedback on what questions we want to ask during the interview, but we should do the same questions to everyone.
100%.
Absolutely.
And I think it would be a good idea, even now, if you have questions that you'd like the candidates to answer, to start emailing them to Janet and myself. And maybe Ruth too, as the chair.
Okay.
If you have ideas for questions that you really would like all the candidates to answer. And we'll start putting together that document.
Does what's our?
MSBA?
MSBA, do they have a kit of sorts that questions we could pull from? our
They
page?
might.
Not that we have to use all of them, but it might be a good.
And we have the
Awesome.
ones, do we still have the ones from last time, Janet, that we could dig out or not?
From '08?
Yeah.
I can dig and see what I've got left from the appointment in '08.
The other thing is you can go online too.
Yeah.
For school board election interview questions, and there'll be hundreds of them that might give you some ideas of kind of up-to-date things that you might want to ask.
So we'll be able to publish this process in a way that states, because on here it says, following the interviews, we will vote for our top choice, and Superintendent Larson will announce, so that we can word it in a way that either on October 27th or on November 3rd, we
I
can
put, will
announce.
determine the top appointment choice and superintendent, and I'll put alternate date, November 3rd, right?
If needed.
But
21.
we'll be announcing it that
if
night.
needed.
That's the way this is worded.
But our preference is to get them all done on the 27th.
To that point, hopefully everyone who sits down with us is truly willing to serve, because the way this says it will be appointing that person,
Yeah.
not offering the position like you're typically used to in a.
Yeah, if you show up on the 27th and we interview all 6, you could well walk out with a shiny new star on.
Just to help, make sure everyone realizes what the process looks like, and that if you sit down with us, you're really serious about serving.
Better be. You're not doing it just for the pizza.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that pizza.
I better make.
And then that person
Sarah's
becomes a
gonna create
board
a
member
Google
on
form
the
for
8th.
toppings.
Right, and then I'm reading this right, that person would attend on the 8th and be installed and
Yeah,
be a member of the board that night.
correct.
Okay?
Okay. So we have the process and timeline completed. Everyone's in agreement. Do we have a motion to approve that process and timeline?
So move.
Oh, second?
Oops. So the first was from Director Boyles and the second from Director Schroeder. Okay, any other discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. It should be kind of fun, actually. Yeah. Okay, the next thing we have is, you have some sheets here, and this is to reassign our school board member assignments and lead representative positions. So as far as officers and commitment, the only change we did was to combine finance and insurance under Kevin, Director Boyles. Is everyone okay with that for now?
Yep, I'll move to approve before anybody changes their mind.
Wait,
to
wait, you can't do it yet, because we also have the school board representatives.
Yep, but I was gonna do that. It's all
Well,
under
we had a
one.
couple questions on those.
Okay,
Sorry, thank you, Tom, I wish we could, but, the project oversight team and the equity advisory team right now have 3 members. So for the next month, only 2 members can be a part of that because of the quorum rule. So we need one person not to be on it for the next month.
Which are the ones?
Blueprint 181 and equity advisory.
So Blueprint, you're talking about oversight, correct?
I'm fine with stepping aside on that, because that'll only encompass the one equity meeting that we have. I think
Okay.
it's next week or the week after, and I was borderline not going to make
Okay.
that one anyway.
And I can step back from the oversight team until,
Just for the month.
yep.
Yeah, Jen, are you okay with that? Okay.
Okay. No, go right ahead, Mr.
Now, go
Hagan.
ahead.
I'll move to approve the reassigned school board member assignments and lead representative positions as presented.
I'll second.
And as presented with those 2 caveats on those 2.
While we have 5 members, yeah.
Well, we have 5 members, okay. Any other discussion?
No, just that this is a really good list for people who are considering applying to be on the board to look at. And see how many
Lest you
things
think
our-
we just show
our
up every
names are
2
by, yeah.
weeks
I mean,
and
truly, I say that
do
somewhat,
this.
but truly, to know what commitment it is outside of these Monday evening meetings.
Plus, it pays $80 a week.
There is that.
I think people need to remember that piece too.
Okay.
What'd you say?
Okay, we have a motion from Director Hagel and a second from Director Blacklands. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, next is the approval of the second and final reading of the updated MSBA policy number 808, face coverings.
So again, so I'm coming back after some of the discussion last board meeting with some questions about updates to the face covering policy. So as you'll see under section 6 under enforcement, we have now included a section in regard to visitors who decline or refuse to comply with this policy, kind of outlining the steps that district administration or the school board chair will act upon. So the first one, if they decline to follow the face covering requirement, we will request the visitor to put on the appropriate and approved face covering. The visitor persists in violating the face covering requirement and directive, excuse me, following being asked to put the face covering on, the visitor will be requested to leave the premises and not return until the appropriate and approved face covering is being worn. A no trespass order may be issued and a referral may be made to the school resource officer and law enforcement for repeated offenses. If repeated disruptions occur during a school event, including school board meetings, the district administration school board chair may immediately end the event. If that occurs, citizens may use alternate avenues to view the school activity, including virtual meetings and online access. Also during school board meetings, the school board chair, district administration may also call a recess and order the room to be cleared until all the protocols are being followed. And then the other change was the missed line in regard to hybrid and distance learning was
Okay,
removed.
just struck that, right?
Yeah, that was just an oversight.
Yep, no worries. Looks fabulous.
Yep. Any other questions?
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the updated face covering policy as presented.
I'll second.
We have a first from Director Boyles, a second from Director Blacklands. Any further discussion? Questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion.
Aye.
Oops, oh, you're opposed?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So 4-1.
What's the quorum again? Is it,
3 now.
oh, it's 3.
It's 3 now, yeah. Okay, next, number 6, do we need to do anything with that?
You know what, I think since we made so many changes to our presentation and how we're going to be distributing the documentation, I think it might be a good idea to approve the COVID plan updates as presented. And so that we know how we're going to present the information in the future. Are you guys okay with that? I mean, you don't have to, but we've made quite a lot of change since we did our initial one.
Is that something we typically have to vote on? So
It's up to you.
Was that Charles?
I just asked if that's typically something we'd have to vote on, if it's,
I mean, I don't really feel like we have to vote on it, but if you guys would want to.
No change to the matrix.
Right.
That's what I would see, a vote needed,
I
and
mean,
change to how
the
you're
only substantive
presenting.
change was the way the data was presented. The decision-making matrix remains in effect as it was prior to this meeting.
And giving more data to the
And I
public
think we're
rather
okay.
than less.
I don't see any reason we would have to vote on it.
Perfect, okay. Okay, next we have first readings of several policies from Mr. Murtha. Hopefully we can take these all as one.
I believe we're looking at the first reading of policies 507, 508, 509, and 517. There's commentary there. Only one of the policies has some portion of significant revision. I don't know if you want to dig into them tonight or if you want to do a quick review and then move forward to policies 501, 502, and 504, which are second and final readings, which were presented at the last school board. Sorry about the typo.
I'm comfortable with the first 4. I reviewed them.
Okay,
yep, same here.
okay. Is that a motion? Director Boyle?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were taking them all as one, but they are separate action items.
Unfortunately, there are 2 separate action items there because there's first versus second
Understood.
readings.
Yep, I gotcha. So I will move to approve the first reading of the updated MSBA policies for 507, 508, 509, and 517.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, and then the second and final reading, were there any changes made to any of those? Any comments?
No changes were made from the previous review of the policy on first reading, just emphasizing that flammable liquids are added to the dangerous weapon and the removal of the zero tolerance policy.
I will move that we approve the second reading of 501, 502, and 505.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a first from Director Schrocken and a second from Director Boyles. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, approval of the second and final reading of revised MSBA Policy 206, Public Participation in School Board Meetings. Is there?
We haven't had any additional changes, right, since last time?
No. Okay. Good. Do you have a motion?
Well, I'll move to approve the second and final reading of that policy as presented.
I'll second.
First from Director Boyles, a second from Director Schrocken. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Who is the first one?
Boyles, Director Boyles. Okay. And 10, another thing, do approve the elimination of health benefits for any newly elected or assigned school board member to the board effective immediately. Board members currently enrolled in health insurance will retain coverage through 12/31/22. And then at that time, it'll be totally eliminated and sunset time pending legal counsel review.
So just to be clear, that'll include the health insurance, the dental, and
Yeah, it would be the benefits, yes.
all the benefits. Yeah.
We should probably include health
Health and dental.
and dental.
I thought I understood this when I first read it. What's the reasoning for, we have it in motion already to end everything at the end of 22, right?
We don't, we only have it through 2021, and then we were going to determine what we were going to do in 2022. And to get it in effect January 1st, we have to act on it October, November.
We act on it every year. We act on our benefits and this is because it came up because the new board member.
And you were going to have to act on it anyway if you were going to make
some-
that change to have it go into effect January 1st.
Has that been previous discussion? Is this the intention to have sunset
Yes.
this? Okay, yeah, it was
Well,
prior to mine
2
and
years
Kevin's
ago.
time, so.
Yep.
I don't know that it was, correct me if I'm wrong, a decision wasn't made to sunset it, a decision was to discuss it later on, right? I mean, if a decision was made and acted on to sunset it at the end of this year, or 22, then there'd be no reason to bring it back.
Well, from my recollection was I was wanting to sunset all benefits to the board members, and then through discussion, I was asked to reconsider that for 2 years, which would have brought us to the end of 2022, which is next year. So that's what I'm operating under right now. With that.
No, 2021.
2021.
No.
2022.
2021, it ends. So then we have to act on it one more time for you to determine as a board what you want to do.
Is this an open enrollment situation? Is that why we need to act on it this time of year, or?
Plus, with a new appointee, they would technically be eligible the day they were appointed, on the 8th. Regardless of open enrollment considerations, because it'll be a change in employment status.
And can we do that? Can we?
Well, that's why the sunset time is pending legal counsel review, and that's what the lawyer said to
No,
put
I
in
can
there
understand
they
that.
would
I just didn't know if we can offer a benefit to some, but not all. I think there are rules for grandfathering, so to speak, people into benefits. I just don't, I feel like I don't know enough about this right now to.
Is it public
Act on
information
it.
which board members use the district's healthcare? Okay.
It's private.
So that's why I just,
It's private.
we still have one more meeting in October.
you
Can we get
still
some more
could table it.
information about
Yeah,
this?
I mean, I would like to
before
table
we-
this for a couple of reasons. I'll let you finish and then
Well,
I'll.
I just don't feel like I have enough information to act on it, so I'm wondering if we can get some history on it and table it until the 25th. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, it would be good to see what the motion was last time.
Right.
I'd like to see what the legal counsel recommendation is.
I'm fearful that this is a can that we've kicked down the road far too many times. And I've been at this spot before, having to push for this, as I mentioned before, that this is money out of the students' pockets that I don't believe board members are necessarily entitled to. Maybe by policy we are, that's what we're looking at changing. I feel it's really important that we step away from this practice of providing such a significant benefit to school board members.
And that helps even just getting that little bit of context, and I don't want to be perceived as kicking it too far down, but I don't think kicking it one more meeting so Kevin and I can get up to speed on the issue, it still allows us to act prior to any new board member coming on, prior to open enrollment period. I just don't have any information on this.
Right, I certainly understand that. I do. I really don't want to miss our window on this.
And I know it's not, but I can say that's not for my, partake in this benefit, so just to be clear, I'm not kicking it down to advocate for myself or anything, I'm just,
Right.
don't know enough about it.
And there's some bias. I'll admit, I don't partake in the benefit either. So I do come from a biased standpoint on this, but still, I believe this is for the students, and I think we need to act on this quickly. If we have to wait until the next board meeting, as long as, Lane, you feel that
We'll
still
have
provides us
plenty
a
of time.
window?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
I guess I'll let it lie then.
So that'll be the table till the 10:25 board.
If I can elaborate on a couple of things real quick. I mean, I think it speaks to, and Director Blacklance and I have had a couple of conversations about this, and I'm in favor of this. I think we just need to dot the i's, cross the t's, and make sure that everybody, because I also do not utilize any of the benefits. But you have to understand how the healthcare for the school district works. It doesn't work like the healthcare that those of us have healthcare who have healthcare elsewhere, because we do it through an insurer like a Blue Cross or an Anthem or somebody like that. In our world, the school district is the insurance carrier. So what that means is if Director Sjogren is using the district insurance, it's not a fixed benefit of paying a premium or a portion of a premium like you would have at an employer, right? At my employer, for example, they pay like 80% of the premium, I pay 20% of it. In our world, it doesn't work like that. In the school district, for any district employee, the way it works is the school district is the insurance carrier. So if you have a medical procedure that costs $35,000, the school district literally writes a check for $35,000. So it isn't a defined benefit in the sense that it's capped at a certain amount of money. It could be whatever you and your family utilize for total medical. So to Director Blacklance's point, it's not like just $10,000. It can be a lot more. It could be a lot less. But it does speak to, I think, a broader discussion that we should have about what the entire compensation package for a board member should look like. And certainly health insurance is part of that. But then again, I would say that if we're going to table it anyway, it bears some I think it would make sense for us to take the, I don't know what it's called, if it's a stipend or what it is, the aforementioned $4,200 a year, which equates to $80 a week, that has not, as far as I know, been changed since the 1980s.
1983, yep.
And do we look at that because now the district is not bearing the burden of healthcare, and given the time commitments that we're asking newer, younger board members that are coming in to do we analyze it as a holistic picture? Or are we really just going to focus on the healthcare piece of it? I'm kind of okay with either one. But it really speaks to, I think, as we're looking at kind of what the road that all of us have traveled over the last few months, and you look ahead to a 2024 or 2026 election cycle and wonder how many people are really going to want to sign up for this. I don't know. I just wanted to throw it out there for discussion, I guess, before we just cavalierly throw it to the side and pick it up again in 2 weeks.
That's a very good point.
I'm not necessarily advocating for more money. As I said before, it equates to $80 a week, which when I do that as an hourly wage, I'm paid somewhere around a North Korean prisoner in a factory, which is okay. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for the kids. In fact, I won't go into any more detail, but the point is, but it might be for somebody. So if we're saving money on the healthcare side, and we could essentially take that stipend and make it just a round number that's more up to date, that at least offsets a little bit of the time commitment, a little bit of the resource commitment that board members have to make to do the things that we do. That kind of thing. I think it bears consideration. Or we look to eliminate that too. I mean, you could even argue that both directions. I mean, I'm not advocating for an increase. I'm advocating for a discussion.
That's fair.
I do want to be careful though, if we tie the two up together, that might be a longer discussion. It may or may not be. So
Well, the
to Charles's point.
compensation is determined at the organizational meeting in January. The financial compensation, that's separate. But in order to hit the January deadline, we have to make the decisions
So
by
we can-
November. Yeah.
Separate.
Yeah, but we could lean into the decision knowing that we're going to revisit the other thing in January and potentially
Absolutely.
make changes as well. That's kind of my point.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, so we will table that for the next meeting.
Yeah, and to be clear, the only reason I'm tabling is not because I'm not in favor of it. It's because I want to wait and see what our legal counsel says about the viability of doing it.
Okay. That ends our action items. So we'll go on to informational. Brainerd Public Schools Foundation.
Oh, That would be
That's
me.
you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Bob and I went to that meeting and just had a really great meeting. I didn't bring all my materials, but we talked a lot about the Warrior Run. It had more people during homecoming participating in the Warrior Run than it ever has, and they were just really excited about that. At the meeting, we talked, we gave an overview of what we were looking at for the district. So Bob and I each gave a report on what's happening in the school district to the foundation. And then they talked in quite detail about going into the scholarship period now and choosing the scholarships again for the spring for all of the graduates. And they also talked about the big event, which will be the first Saturday in February. And so really, just excited about school year and keeping really busy. They're loving their new digs over there with their new space, and it's going really well. So yeah, it was a good meeting, fun. And Jana's going to be on there next time, so you'll enjoy that committee a lot. They're great to work with. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that report. And next up is our business services report. You're kind of slow tonight, Marcy.
I was falling asleep back there. Just kidding. In your packet is the enrollment report. We are down 9 from last month's report, and then as of last year, we were down 7, and the prior year it was 13, and the year before in 18-19 we were down 28. So on average, we're not doing too bad actually. And then just a quick update, the audit starts this week, so then once that's wrapped up, I will give you guys the June financial report, and then we'll also follow up with the actual audit report with the auditors at, normally it's in the December board meeting, but if we get wrapped up enough, maybe potentially November. Any questions?
And you're quite optimistic about what
Yes.
the audit. So.
Yes. We have a number of line items that are under budget, so we are going to come in better than projected in the black, not the red. So,
Oh, nice.
Which we're very thrilled about.
Yeah.
yes.
It's exciting. Do you know why I didn't have it up here, but I noticed the 12th grade keeps going up, the numbers.
That, yes, and that's really out of character. Normally
Yeah.
it's the opposite where we lose most of our high schoolers. So it is kind of odd. I do agree.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Mhm. Yes.
Interesting.
Not to question the numbers, Marcy, but I thought the same thing. It's, we sure that the number's right because, I don't know, we've never had a class ever that high.
I can have Sue dig into it further. Yep,
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
for sure.
And then we have the superintendent's report.
Yeah, I have nothing additional to add today. I think we've talked about everything that I had highlighted.
Okay, wonderful. And then you can see the future meetings, and remember to add those interview dates, the October 27th and November 3rd to your calendar. And so now we need to go into closed session for labor negotiation strategy pursuant, and it'll be closed pursuant to Minnesota State Statute Section 13D.03. So I need a motion.
I'll move that we move into closed session as presented.
Second. So first from Director Boyles, second from Director Sjogren. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?